A single dad dismissed as nothing more than a janitor walks unnoticed through a police precinct. Hours later, when bullets rain down in a dark garage, this invisible man does the unthinkable. He rushes headfirst into the gunfire to save the very cop who had mocked him earlier that day. What no one knew is that Daniel Cross once wore a different uniform, one marked by valor scars and shadows of war. This is not just a story about danger. It's about resilience. It's about second chances. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story has traveled. Daniel Cross moved like a shadow. Mop bucket wheels squeaked faintly against the linoleum floor of the 14th precinct, but no one looked up. Uniformed officers hurried past carrying files, coffee, and the exhaustion of another shift. Their voices clattered with gossip and case talk echoing through narrow halls. None of them noticed the man in gray coveralls pushing a cart filled with cleaning supplies. Daniel preferred it that way. Invisibility had become a kind of shield, a comfort. He was the man who emptied trash bins, scrubbed scuff marks from the floor, and replaced paper towels when no one else thought about them. To most, he was furniture, background noise, a set of keys jingling faintly at his belt. But every step he took was deliberate, every glance calculated. His eyes a muted steel gray swept rooms the way a hunter surveys a field. Corners, exits, patterns of movement. Even when pretending to be ordinary, his body betrayed him. His back stayed straight shoulders, square hands, steady. A soldier's bearing, though no one here knew it or cared. Except one person had noticed. Detective Lauren Hale. She stood near the bullpen window, her dark hair tied in a precise knot posture as rigid as her reputation. She didn't smile much. She didn't waste words. Officers both respected and feared her. She noticed things others dismissed, and she had noticed Daniel Cross. But not enough to ask. Not yet. The precinct was alive that morning. Phones rang, radios crackled. A rookie laughed too loudly at a sergeant's joke. Daniel worked quietly, changing liners in the break room trash can. He hummed faintly under his breath, a habit to fill silence. That's when the sound ripped through the calm. Gunfire. Sharp. Sudden. Echoing up from the underground garage. The precinct froze. For a second, silence before boots thundered against tile floors, chairs scraped back, radios blared with alarm. Officers shouted over one another, rushing toward the stairwell. And Daniel stopped breathing. Not from fear, from recognition. The sound of gunfire struck him like a flashback, sand smoke, adrenaline. His muscles tightened automatically. His posture changed. His face, normally slack with practiced indifference, hardened into something sharper. The janitor mask slipped. For a brief moment, the ghost of Captain Daniel Cross, the man he used to be, emerged. His hand even twitched toward his hip where once upon a time a sidearm rested. But there was nothing there now, only a rag stuffed into his pocket. He forced himself still. This wasn't his fight, not anymore. Yet his heart pounded louder than the alarms. 2 stories below, the chaos deepened. Radio chatter screamed of officers down, of masked men, of a transfer gone wrong. And in that whirlwind of panic, Daniel Cross did what no one expected a janitor to do. He started moving toward the danger. But long before that moment, before the chaos of the garage, before the mocking words of a detective would sting his pride, Daniel's life had already been defined by battles. 10 years earlier, in a desert halfway around the world, he wasn't pushing a mop. He was leading men. Captain Daniel Cross Army Rangers. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Missions so classified, even his closest friends couldn't know their full scope. He had been the one they called when situations turned impossible. Hostage rescues, ambush recoveries, extraction under fire. He had been marked for greatness. Promotions loomed, medals gleamed. Fellow soldiers spoke his name with reverence. They said his instincts could smell an ambush before the first shot was fired. Until the day everything shattered. The convoy had rolled through Kandahar's outskirts, dust choking the horizon. Children watched from rooftops. Women pulled shawls tighter around their shoulders. Daniel sat in the lead vehicle headset, crackling with static when the explosion came. Heat, screams, fire. Half his unit gone in seconds. Daniel dragged bodies from burning metal, ignoring the pain in his own chest. Bullets rained down, cutting air around him. He fought like a man possessed, pulling 3 men back from death's edge. His decision saved lives that day, but not all. Never all. And when it ended, when silence fell, he had a bullet lodged so close to his spine, doctors debated whether removing it would kill him outright. 18 months of recovery followed, pain that never left, nightmares that never eased. When his wife Rachel tried to stand by him, she lasted a year. The night terrors, the sudden rages, the silence that followed, she couldn't do it. She left custody papers in hand, unable to carry the burden. But Daniel refused to let go of Lily, their daughter, 8 years old now, with her mother's dark hair and his stubborn eyes. She became his anchor, his only reason to wake up each morning. His pension covered food, but not enough for everything else. He needed work with hours that fit around her school, her needs, her life. And so the janitor's job. Nights cleaning precinct floors while Lily slept at a neighbor's apartment. A paycheck. Flexibility. Nothing more. The officers had looked sideways at first. Why would a man with his background check choose a mop over a gun? But the captain at the time had shrugged, filed the paperwork. Your business is yours, just keep the place clean. That suited Daniel just fine. For 3 years, he'd walked unseen through these halls, listening, watching, knowing everything that went on while being treated like he was no one at all. Until now. Until gunfire ripped through the walls and the soldier inside him stirred. He stood at the stairwell entrance, mop forgotten, listening as officers shouted into radios. 2 down, repeat, 2 officers down. Where the hell is backup? They're escaping with Vega. Daniel's jaw clenched. Vega. Ramon Vega. The name alone carried weight. A drug trafficker bold enough to orchestrate an ambush inside a police garage. Organized, funded, ruthless. Daniel's pulse quickened. He told himself to step back, to let them handle it. He wasn't one of them anymore. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a cop. He was a janitor with a daughter who needed him alive. But even as his mind argued, his body betrayed him. Feet moving closer, ears tuned to every radio word, eyes scanning every officer's expression. He could see panic in their movements, scattered, unfocused. Good men, but unprepared for the precision of an ambush. And he knew with cold certainty that if someone didn't act, more officers would die. He gripped the stairwell railing, knuckles white. Inside, the war he'd buried roared awake. This was the moment. The moment when invisibility would either remain his shield, or when Daniel Cross, the ghost of a soldier, would step back into the light. And fate, cruel, unrelenting, was about to push him into fire. Because down there, trapped and outgunned, was Detective Lauren Hale, the same one who only hours earlier had mocked him. And Daniel Cross was about to choose whether to stay a janitor or to rush headfirst into the gunfire to save her life. The garage reeked of exhaust fumes and gunpowder. Muzzle flashes lit the dim concrete cavern as officers scrambled for cover behind patrol cars. Their radios screeched half-coherent orders, panic colliding with procedure. Bullets ricocheted against pillars, sparking showers of concrete dust. Detective Lauren Hale pressed her back against a tire, jaw clenched. Her breathing came sharp and fast, but her hand stayed steady around her Glock. Across the garage, masked men moved with brutal confidence, covering Vega as he sprinted toward the open gate. She could see him, could almost squeeze the trigger, but there were too many shooters between them, cutting down her line of fire. She peeked around the bumper, fired twice. One assailant ducked. Another returned fire so close the shot whined past her ear. Lauren hissed through her teeth. "Damn it," she muttered, voice trembling for only half a second before the steel returned. Above the chaos, the sound of boots thundered on the stairwell. Not just the officers who had followed, but one man who had no business being there. Daniel Cross. He had no weapon, no vest, no badge, only instinct and an invisible weight pressing against his chest. He reached the landing, his body dropping low as bullets sparked against the wall near him. His eyes swept the garage in a single precise scan, the way a tactician sees a battlefield, not a janitor sees a mess. Positions. Cover. Angles. 3 shooters by the exit, 1 reloading behind a pillar, 1 circling wide along the far row of cars. He inhaled, slow, controlled. Old training surged like muscle memory. The scent of oil and dust became sand and smoke. The yells of officers blurred into the screams of soldiers. The garage floor shifted beneath him, tilting toward memory. Kandahar, The ambush. Men dying. The bullet in his back burning. For a second, Daniel wasn't in a garage. He was in a war zone. And then Lily's face flashed across his mind. Her smile. Her tiny hand holding his. Focus. Daniel shoved the memory back. His eyes narrowed on the scene in front of him. Not Kandahar. Not then. Now. But across the garage, Lauren barked into her radio. Cover the stairwell. They'll come through there next. Her voice commanding and cold cut through static. Officers scrambled, but they were spread too thin. She glanced toward the shadows near the landing and froze. A figure crouched there. Not a cop. The janitor. What the hell? She breathed, her finger tightening on her trigger instinctively. He shouldn't have been here. He should have been upstairs, invisible, mopping some forgotten hallway. Instead, he was moving like no janitor ever should, calm under fire, calculating every breath. Their eyes met. Just for a flicker. And something in the back of her mind shifted. Daniel pressed himself behind a column, searching desperately for anything. His hands brushed metal. A service wrench. He slid it silently into his grip. Not much, but better than nothing. He shifted his gaze, tracking the shooter creeping toward Lauren's flank. She hadn't seen him. Her focus was on Vega and the main fire. Daniel's heartbeat slowed. 1 second stretched into 3. He moved. A silent sprint across the floor. The masked gunman turned just as Daniel slammed the wrench against his wrist, sending the pistol clattering. Daniel drove his shoulder into the man's chest, grappling him against a car hood. Their grunts tangled with the echo of gunfire. The shooter swung wildly. Daniel ducked, jammed an elbow into his ribs. Old drills flooded his body, close combat disarm control. Within seconds, the man collapsed unconscious to the concrete. Lauren's eyes widened. The janitor had just taken out an armed suspect with nothing but a wrench and sheer precision. She wanted to shout at him, to demand what the hell he thought he was doing, but there was no time, because Vega was almost out. Lauren cursed under her breath, vaulted over the hood, and fired 3 more shots. One struck a pillar, another clipped a gunman's shoulder. Vega ducked, grabbed the injured man, and used him as a shield. Coward Lauren muttered, aiming again. A shout echoed from behind her. Detective left side. Her head snapped. It was him. The janitor. Daniel. She turned just in time to fire at a gunman circling wide. He dropped his weapon, clattering across the concrete. For a heartbeat, silence rang between them. Her, the hardened detective. Him, the ghost of a soldier disguised as a janitor. Then the chaos roared back. Captain Briggs stormed into the garage with backup, his booming voice cutting through the gunfire. Push them back. Don't let Vega out. Officers pressed forward, shots traded. Vega slipped into the shadows, escaping into the night with 2 of his men. The rest scattered or were taken down in the fray. The garage stank of cordite and sweat. Bodies sprawled, wounded officers, cuffed suspects. Sirens wailed outside as ambulances screeched up the ramp. Lauren lowered her weapon, chest heaving, and her gaze landed once more on Daniel Cross. He stood near the unconscious gunman, he'd felled, wrench still in his hand, shoulders squared like a soldier waiting for orders. But no one spoke to him. No one asked. They walked past him, already forgetting. Except her. Lauren stepped closer, her voice edged with disbelief. What exactly are you? Daniel looked at her, expression unreadable. Then he dropped the wrench into his mop bucket, the clang loud in the quiet aftermath. Just a janitor, he said, and he walked away. But Lauren Hale didn't believe him, not for a second. Not after what she'd seen in the fire of the garage. Not after the man who was invisible revealed for a moment who he truly was. The conference room smelled faintly of burnt coffee and sweat. Files lay scattered across the long oak table, half-empty styrofoam cups ringed with stains. Officers argued in sharp bursts, their voices cutting over one another, fingers stabbing at reports, tempers fraying under the fluorescent lights. Captain Briggs stood at the head of the table, face red with fury. His fist slammed down so hard that pens bounced. I want to know how 3 armed men walked into our garage without a single alarm going off, he barked. Someone dropped the ball, and I want to know who a hush fell, followed by defensive mutters. Security officers shifted uncomfortably, blaming outdated equipment. Dispatchers argued their alerts were ignored. Fingers pointed in every direction. Detective Lauren Hale sat near the window, jaw set, tablet in hand. Unlike the others, she wasn't shouting. She was watching. Rewinding the surveillance footage from the garage again and again, eyes narrowing with each pass. The screen showed officers walking, cars pulling in. Nothing unusual, then chaos. No warning signs, no forced entry. Her lips pressed thin. The cameras show nothing unusual until the moment of the attack, she reported flatly. No suspicious movement, no breach, which means they had inside help, Briggs cut in, glaring at the table. And I'll find out who. Murmurs rippled. Suspicion poisoned the air. That was when a quiet voice spoke from the doorway. Excuse me. Head snapped up. Every pair of eyes landed on the janitor. Daniel Cross stood in the doorway, mop handle leaning against his shoulder coveralls dusted with grime. His voice was calm, almost hesitant, but carried just enough weight to slice through the noise. The service elevator, he said. It's been malfunctioning. For a moment, silence, then laughter, disbelieving. Officer Dunn leaned back in his chair, smirking. What's next, janitor? Gonna tell us how to run the precinct. But Daniel didn't flinch. He kept his eyes level. It sometimes responds to calls without logging them in the system, he explained. I use it to move cleaning supplies. Reported it 3 weeks ago. Captain Briggs frowned. He shuffled through maintenance records. No report here. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. I filled out the form. Left it with Officer Dunn. All eyes swiveled to the smirking officer. Dunn shrugged, feigning indifference. Don't remember any form from the janitor. Lauren leaned forward. It requires a key card, she said pointedly. Not if you override the panel, Daniel replied, voice even. There's a maintenance mode. Old system. Easy to exploit if you know what you're doing. The room fell silent again. For the first time, they weren't looking at him like a janitor. They were listening. Lauren studied his face, his calm tone, his steady eyes. She saw no arrogance, no eagerness, just certainty. Briggs leaned back, suspicion flickering in his gaze. And how exactly would you know that Daniel held his stare? Because I read the manuals, because I use that elevator every night. Because someone needed to tell you. Lauren broke the silence, her voice clipped but curious. And you think that's how Vega's men got in? Daniel hesitated, then added, they also knew the exact timing of the transfer. That information wasn't public. The words landed like a grenade. The room stiffened. Inside information. A leak. Briggs's face darkened. Are you suggesting one of our own sold us out? Daniel didn't blink. I'm suggesting you check who accessed the transfer schedule. The weight of his words hung heavy in the room. Before anyone could respond, Lauren stepped between them. You're overstepping, Mr. Cross. Please return to your duties. Her tone was sharp, dismissive, but her eyes lingered on him longer than they should have. As Daniel turned to leave, mop clattering softly against the tiles, she was still watching. For the first time, she wasn't just seeing the janitor. She was seeing a man who knew far too much. The hallway outside was quieter. Daniel pushed his cart slowly, hand steady, expression unreadable, but inside his pulse drummed hard. He hadn't meant to speak, had promised himself invisibility, but the pattern was too clear to ignore. Stay out of it, he muttered under his breath. Not your world anymore. And yet the echo of Briggs's question rang in his ears. How did you know? How indeed? Later that evening, in the precinct break room, Daniel wiped crumbs from the counter. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. The door opened. Lauren Hale stepped in. Her heels clicked against the floor, her presence sharp as always. She poured herself coffee, then turned. Your employment record says you were Army military police, she said, her eyes cutting straight to him. Daniel didn't look up. Rangers? His voice was flat. Her brows arched. That's quite a career change. Life changes. We adapt. She studied him, her usual mask slipping for a flicker. There was genuine curiosity there. Maybe even a trace of respect. The service elevator theory, she continued. You really think that's how they got in? Daniel finished wiping the counter. I think it's worth checking before you accuse your own people of collusion. A pause. Her lips twitched, surprised by his directness, or maybe by the logic she couldn't ignore. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. Not detective to janitor, not superior to subordinate, just two people equally scarred, equally cautious, recognizing something in the other. Then her phone rang. Winters. She snapped, mask sliding back into place. She listened, expression hardening. "I'll be right there." As she turned to leave, she paused. "For what it's worth, I am checking the elevator." Daniel nodded once, said nothing. But when she left, he exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, someone had looked past the mop, past the coveralls, past the shield of invisibility. And that was dangerous. Night pressed against the station windows like a heavy palm. The bullpen quieted to a tense murmur. Phones chirped, keyboards clacked, radios hissed and settled. Detective Lauren Hale moved with intent, her heels whispering overtile as she cut through the maze of desks toward the service corridor. She didn't look right or left. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Two uniforms trailed after her, uncertain. A lock specialist from facilities hustled to catch up, jangling a pouch of tools. The elevator, she said without slowing. Panel inspection. Now. They reached the service elevator, dull stainless doors scuffed at shin-height, call button glowing a tired yellow. It looked harmless, old, unremarkable. Lauren pressed the call button once. The light blinked. The doors opened with a reluctant sigh. Inside, steel walls, ceiling grate, emergency phone panel, a place that smelled like dust and forgotten coffee. "Override plate," she said. The lock specialist knelt, pried off the bottom panel with a practiced wrist. Beneath it, a nest of wires and a small keypad with faded numbers almost hidden. The specialist whistled under his breath. "Ancient," he muttered. "Most folks don't even know these exist." Lauren's gaze sharpened. "Could someone force it without logging a call?" He nodded slowly, tapping the keypad with a gloved knuckle. "If you know the timing sequence. Trick the logger. Elevator answers. System never records." Her jaw tightened. "Show me." He entered a staggered series: 2 presses, pause, 3 presses longer, pause, final press. The elevator doors stuttered, stopped halfway, then shut again. The panel light never changed. No ding, no log. The uniforms exchanged looks. Lauren's mind was already sprinting ahead. The janitor was right. The elevator could be ghost-called, which meant the ambush hadn't floated through concrete. It had ridden this quiet box straight from the outside dock to the garage, invisible to any system that mattered. She leaned closer to the exposed wiring. Someone had been here. Recently. New electrical tape overlapped brittle old tape. A faint smudge of oil smoothed over the screw head. Not factory residue. Hands. Human. "Careful. Bag the panel," she said. "Dust for prints. Pull last week's maintenance schedules and compare signatures." As the specialist sealed the plate into a clear bag, Lauren stepped back and let the elevator doors sigh shut. She stared at her own reflection, a pale ghost floating in brushed steel, and saw all at once the precise line her day had drawn. Morning skepticism, afternoon a theory, night proof, and threaded through it the quiet figure with the mop, Daniel Cross. Why did it bother her? Not his presence, truth be told, had steadied her under fire. It was the way he didn't reach for credit, didn't posture, didn't even seem to want to exist in this room called notice, as if the act of being seen might break something delicate inside him. Enough. She turned. With me. They moved. The security office was a cramped coffin of monitors and stale chips. Screens flickered with postage stamp views of stairwells, doorways, huddled parking lanes. A desk fan pushed hot air in a tired circle. Officer Rhodes, a day shift guard with a sunburned neck and a kind word for anyone who brought coffee, looked up. Detective. Footage from yesterday early morning through the ambush. All angles that include the service dock, the back corridor, and the garage. He logged in, fingers clumsy but quick, and the timeline unspooled. Camera angles blinked by like lazy eyes. The first hour, nothing. The second delivery's couriers, a cluster of rookies dragging cones across the lot. Back it up 10 minutes, Lauren said. He rewound. A van. A pause. A custodian's cart rolling into frame. Her chest tightened instinctively. But it wasn't him, not Daniel. Another custodian, older, stooped, stopping to curse softly when a trash bag split and rained coffee grounds on his shoes. Keep going. At 8:41 a.m., the service elevator doors opened into an empty corridor. No call tone, no log. Doors shut again. Lauren felt the click of it, the undeniable shape of a hand moving in secret. Note the timestamp, she said, and pull access logs from every door on this level for a matching window. If a person ghosted the elevator, they still had to get in. Somewhere someone opened something. Rhodes nodded, jotting notes. On the wall of monitors, a camera over the bullpen caught a small detail easy to miss if you weren't looking. Officer Dunn walked by an unattended desk. His hand dropped. A flash drive disappeared into his palm like a coin into a magician's sleeve. Lauren stilled. Freeze. Zoom. The image bloomed into grainy blocks, but the gesture was clear, casual, practiced. Her mind connected the dots the janitor had laid on the table. Elevator. Schedules. Inside knowledge. The shape became a figure. The figure cast a shadow. "We're not done with Dunn," she said softly. Rhodes glanced up. "Ma'am, nothing." Her voice returned to stone. "Flag every instance of Dunn near unsecured data terminals for the last 30 days. I want to count. A map. A pattern." "Yes, detective." She stood there one heartbeat longer, watching Dunn's pixel body walk out of frame, and felt the old familiar heat, a mix of vindication and dread. Vindication because she had a thread to pull now. Dread because threads have ends and ends have teeth. Lauren exhaled, measured. "Ping me as soon as your pull is done." On her way out, she stopped at the threshold, a tug in her chest, a decision she hadn't planned to make. "Officer Rhodes," she said without turning, "if the janitor Cross comes by, send him to me. Directly." Rhodes blinked. "Yes, ma'am." She left before he could add the obvious question. Daniel cleaned the break room as if the room's innocence depended on him. Wiped down the table. Fished a gum wrapper from under the vending machine with the end of a ruler. Replaced the empty sugar packets with a small pyramid from the supply box. The ritual calmed his hands, gave his mind something to rest on. He could still smell gunpowder if he closed his eyes. He could still feel the garage floor rolling under his boots like the deck of a ship in a hard wind. He could still hear Lily's voice on the phone from last night, small and sleepy. "Daddy, do you think stars make a sound?" "No," he'd said, smiling into the dark. "But if they did, I think they'd sound like rain." The door swung open. Detective Hale. No coffee this time, no clipped courtesy, just direct. "You were right," she said. He didn't stop moving the rag in slow circles. "About what?" "The elevator. There's an old override. The logger can be fooled." He nodded once. "Then it was used." "We think so." Silence swelled. He could feel the pivot arriving even before she spoke again. The pivot from caution to trust. The moment a gate somewhere inside her opened one notch. "Why did you tell us?" she asked. Not accusatory. Not grateful. Just wanting to understand the boundary he'd crossed. He considered the rag. Considered the streak of light on the stainless steel sink. Considered a different room, a different world, a different lifetime, where men took orders from his mouth and no one called him janitor. "Because I was there," he said quietly, "when people needed help. And nobody came." Her eyes shifted softer for one beat. "Kandahar." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The set of his jaw had already said it. The breath he didn't quite take had already agreed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We caught the elevator. Now we need the hand that pressed the buttons." "Done," he said before he could stop himself. Her gaze sharpened. "You think it's him?" "I think he doesn't look at people when he lies. I think he takes the long way around desks with open screens. And I think his phone lights up when he gets bad news, not good." Her mouth tipped, half surprise, half reluctant admiration. "You watch, I clean," he said. Then after a breath, "People talk around the man with the mop." Lauren folded her arms, leaning her hip against the counter. "Cross if you have something you can tell me, and I'll take the heat." He shook his head. "You already are." A beat. Two. The hum of the vending machine filled the space between them like a third presence. She straightened. "I need access to the dock area between 3 and 4 this morning. If someone ghosted the elevator, they likely came in there. Cameras are blind on 2 angles." "Door magnets stick," he said, On humid nights, the West Service door doesn't close clean. You can pop it with a screwdriver and a little patience. Her brows rose. And how do you... Because I've had to fix it. He could feel it, the quiet bridge spanning from her suspicion to her trust. Not a dramatic reveal, not a light switch, just plank by plank, word by word. Come, she said finally. Show me. They moved like a strange pair of dancers through the sleeping corridors, here in a fitted blazer, him in gray coveralls, with a ring of keys. The precinct at night was a different country. Fewer voices, more echoes, the distant clatter of a printer, a cough in records, a soft laugh in dispatch that sounded almost illegal. The West Service door looked innocent as a confession. Daniel knelt, wedged the tip of a flathead screwdriver under the sill, worked it gently. Humidity bit the magnet, he said. Watch. The latch released with a click that felt too loud. A seam of night air slipped in, cool and damp, smelling faintly of rain and the river beyond the alley. Lauren stared at the inch of open dark. How many people know this? Anyone who cares to. He eased the door shut again. Which isn't many. They stood there, shoulders almost but not quite touching, and listened to the buzzy glow of the exit sign. You could have left in the garage, she said, voice low, eyes on the green light. When you took down that gunman, nobody would have stopped you. I did, he said, twice. And then you came back. He didn't answer. She turned to face him. Night pooled in her eyes like ink. Cross, I don't care what badge you don't carry. You saved 2 of my people. You saved me. I can't pretend you're just a man with a mop. He wished briefly and fiercely that she would, that she'd let him slip back into the soft dark where names didn't echo and hands didn't shake. But he found himself saying, I have a daughter. I know. Her mother left because the war followed me home. I know that too. That startled him. A fraction. Enough to lift his eyes. I'm a detective, she said, a wry thread in her voice. I detect. For the first time, a corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. The idea of one. The ghost of one. The thing about ghosts, she added softly, is that sometimes they save people. He looked away before that could land where it wanted to. Pull Dunn's call logs. If he's the leak, he'll have an unusual pattern right before the ambush. Short calls. Repeat numbers. Maybe a burner. She nodded, already moving mind-vaulting ahead to subpoenas and cell towers and a judge who owed her a favor. Cross. He paused. Thank you. He left the thank you where she'd put it untouched and followed her back into the light. By the time they returned to the bullpen, the room had grown a new face. Officers spoke quieter. The argument smell had faded. Captain Briggs towered by the whiteboard, as if he could frighten the truth into appearing. Lauren crossed to him, unfolded the elevator bag like a flag. Manual override. Ghost call. We have timestamps. Briggs's gaze snagged on Daniel, then slid away as if embarrassed by the earlier laughter in the conference room. He grunted, satisfied and irritated in equal measure. Fine. We follow it. Hail take roads. Start with the dock cross index with whoever accessed the transfer docks. He looked back to Daniel. Grudging. Respect struggling against protocol. Mr. Cross. Daniel braced for reprimand, for a boundary flare, for a return to the comfortable fiction. Good catch. 2 words. Barely. But they shifted the temperature of the room. Heads lifted, eyes flicked. The story of the janitor began rewiring itself wire by wire inside the precinct's collective mind. Lauren didn't linger to savor it. She pivoted, already issuing orders. I want prints, I want logs, and I want Officer Dunn in my interview room by dawn. Her voice cracked like a whip. The room moved. Daniel stood very still and let the motion pass around him. He thought of Lily's drawing on the fridge. A stick figure with a triangle dress standing beside another with a square torso and too many fingers. Above them, a smudged sun with 12 lines. He thought of stars sounding like rain. He thought of how easy it would be to stop now, to slip backward into the quiet, to let the night close, to pretend that a wrench in his hand was all he had ever needed. Cross, Lauren said, already halfway to the door. Walk with me. He did. Not because she ordered, because trust once sparked sometimes only asks for one more step. Daniel Cross's apartment was quiet that night. too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator filled the air, mingling with the faint tick of an old wall clock. Beyond the window, the city glowed with restless neon, but inside everything was stripped bare. Walls painted off-white furniture, practical and worn, not a photograph in sight. Except for Lily's drawings. They clung to the refrigerator door with cheap magnets, scribbled rainbows, smiling suns, a stick figure in green crayon she labeled Daddy. Each picture was a burst of color against the gray of his life. They were his anchors, proof of something worth waking for. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, staring at a chessboard he never moved unless Lily played with him. Knights and pawns waited mid-game, frozen in battle like soldiers too tired to fight. His hand hovered over a rook. He didn't move it. Instead, his mind replayed the garage, the echo of gunfire, the smell of burning rubber, the flash of Hale's face as she crouched behind the squad car steady, even when bullets carved the air, and his own body betraying him, sliding back into combat stances he had sworn he'd buried. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the deep knot there. His chest tightened. He whispered into the empty room almost to himself. Stay invisible. Stay small. But he already knew he'd broken that promise. The bedroom was just as bare. A bed made with military precision. Corners so sharp you could cut yourself on them. A single lamp. 2 books on the nightstand, both unopened, both gifts from Lily's teacher. He hadn't had the patience to read in years, but on the windowsill sat a small planter box of zinnias and marigolds, bright flowers in cheap soil. He'd planted them the spring after Rachel left. When the apartment was at its darkest, he needed something that bloomed, something stubborn enough to survive despite the cracked concrete balcony, despite the pollution in the air. He tended them every morning before Lily woke. Quiet hands, soft soil, sunlight. It reminded him life could grow even in broken places. He leaned against the window now, staring down at the parking lot 2 stories below. His reflection looked back, lined, tired, jaw tight. He touched the glass. This isn't my war anymore, he muttered. Not mine. But memory disagreed. Memory dragged him back. To Kandahar, to the convoy ambush, the dust storm that turned daylight into a red shroud. The scream of metal as his Humvee flipped. The body of Corporal Myers sprawled across the sand, eyes wide, chest unmoving. Daniel had crawled on broken knees, dragging soldiers out of fire. He remembered the sting of bullets slicing air inches from his skull, the heat of flames curling his back, the explosion that sent shrapnel into his spine, lodging deep, and the moment he realized half his unit was gone. He gritted his teeth now, his hand gripping the sill so tight his knuckles whitened. The war had followed him home. It slept beside him in silence. It woke him in the night with sweat and shivers. It whispered when Lily hugged him, reminding him how fragile, how easily taken life could be. The phone buzzed on the counter. A text. From the neighbor, Mrs. Kelly. Lily's asleep. Everything's fine. He exhaled slowly. Relief always came in waves. Knowing his daughter was safe meant everything. He opened his laptop. Not for movies, not for news, for schematics. The service elevator's manufacturer, maintenance codes, override sequences. He scanned the lines of diagrams like a man reading scripture. Every note, every line mattered. He memorized the keystroke sequence, tested the timing in his head. It wasn't new to him. Security systems had been part of his training. He'd broken more than one when survival depended on it. This one was child's play. Too easy. And that's what chilled him. Whoever orchestrated Vega's ambush knew exactly what to exploit. He shut the laptop sharply, the sound snapping through the room. Stay out of it, he told himself again. You're not theirs. You're not a soldier. You're not a cop. But Hale's voice lingered, needling at him. We caught the elevator. Now we need the hand that pressed the buttons. He closed his eyes. Done. The way he smirked, the way he shrugged off the missing report, the way his phone never left his hand. Daniel's instincts screamed it. He just didn't want them to be right. Morning crept in on pale light. Daniel's alarm buzzed at 6:00 a.m. He rose immediately. No snooze. Habit. He brewed coffee, cheap bitter black. He fried 2 eggs, set them aside for Lily. He packed her lunchbox with cut fruit crackers, a sandwich cut diagonally just the way she liked. At 6:45, he knocked on his neighbor's door. Lily burst out, hair messy, eyes still sleepy but glowing at the sight of her father. She wore a wrinkled t-shirt with a unicorn faded from too many washes. "Daddy," she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. Daniel knelt, hugging her tightly, his eyes closed, breathing her in. Strawberry shampoo, warmth, safety. "You ready for school?" She made a face. "Do I have to?" He chuckled softly. "Afraid so, kiddo." At the kitchen table, he checked her homework. Neat math problems, penciled drawings in the margin. He praised her for the effort, pointing out one mistake, gently turning it into a lesson. She listened, chin propped on her hand, eyes darting toward her backpack with a sigh. "Chess tonight?" she asked, hopeful. "Of course." After drop-off, Daniel returned to the precinct. His cart rattled. Mop bucket sloshed keys jingled faintly against his hip. Officers streamed past without a word, lost in their own storms. But something had shifted. They didn't just walk through him anymore. Some glanced. Some nodded. Not many, but enough. He felt the weight of eyes when he pushed his cart into the bullpen. Detective Hale was at her desk scanning printouts. She looked up as he entered. Their eyes met, just for a moment. She nodded, subtle, barely there, but enough. Later in the women's restroom, Daniel knelt inside a maintenance closet, fixing a leaking pipe. Wrench steadied jaw working as he tightened the joint. The door opened. He saw her reflection in the mirror, Lauren Hale. She splashed cold water on her face, bracing herself against the sink. She looked younger somehow, softer without her armor. The lines of control and calculation eased for just a breath. She didn't see him at first. Then she did. She startled only for a blink before the mask snapped back. "Mr. Cross," she said evenly. He lifted the wrench, half smiling, fixing the sink. "Of course." She hesitated. Then her voice shifted, lower-edged with something like respect. "You were right about the elevator. And about the schedule. Only 6 people had access. We're investigating everyone." Daniel tightened the final bolt, slid the wrench into his belt. "Check Dunn's phone records." Her eyes narrowed. "Why him, specifically brother-in-law, was arrested last month by narcotics. Same unit that brought in Vega." Her voice sharpened. "And how do you know that—" He stood wiping his hands on a rag. "People talk around the janitor. They forget I'm there." Her lips parted just slightly. Not disbelief. Calculation. Then she asked the question she hadn't asked before. "Is there anything else you've overheard that might be relevant?" Daniel paused. His mind flicked to the Ridgewood address. Vega's girlfriend's place. "Maple Street," he said quietly. 1214. Ridgewood. Her expression cracked for the first time. She blinked, stunned. "We've been looking for a connection to Ridgewood for 2 days. How do you, Officer Collins?" Loud phone calls. Every afternoon at his desk. Too loud not to notice. Her breath caught. She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. For the first time, she didn't just see a janitor with uncanny instincts. She saw a man carrying a skill set she couldn't ignore. She opened her mouth, closed it again. Then she managed only 2 words. "Thank you." And Daniel Cross realized with a chill running down his spine that his carefully built invisibility was crumbling, piece by piece. And there was no going back. Detective Lauren Hale drove her point home like she always did with evidence. By the afternoon, her team had raided the Ridgewood address. And just as Daniel Cross had said, Ramon Vega's girlfriend lived there. The small brick house tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a dented auto garage smelled of stale perfume and cigarette smoke when the door was breached. Inside, they found more than Vega's shirt hanging in the closet, stacks of burner phones, a ledger with coded entries, and on the kitchen counter, maps of the warehouse district, dotted with circles that matched shipping dates. Lauren stood with arms crossed, watching uniforms bag evidence. She didn't say it out loud, but the words burned on her tongue. The janitor had been right. Again. Back at the precinct, officers buzzed with nervous energy. Whispers carried across desks, rippling like wind over grass. "How do we even find Ridgewood?" one asked. Hale's tip, another answered. "No way." She had help. From who, not sure. But she won't say. They turned eyes, landing briefly on Daniel as he pushed his cart past. Their whispers dipped lower. Daniel kept his head down, mop handle clicking against the bucket rim. But his ears, trained long ago to catch whispers in wind, caught every word. Officer Jenkins, young and restless, finally stepped up. He lingered in the lobby while Daniel wrung out a mop. After an awkward pause, he cleared his throat. "You're cross-right?" Jenkins asked. Daniel didn't look up. "That's what it says on my uniform." The young officer shifted, uncomfortable. "About yesterday, the elevator thing. Turns out you were onto something. They found evidence someone tampered with it." Daniel said nothing, letting silence stretch. He kept pushing the mop in slow arcs across the tile. Jenkins scratched the back of his neck. "Detective Hale's leading the investigation now. She's got us checking everyone who had access to the transfer schedule." Daniel finally spoke, voice low. "Good." Jenkins hesitated, then blurted, "You were military, right? Bill and security said you were pretty deep." Daniel's eyes flicked up, just for a moment. "Deep enough?" "My brother's Marines," Jenkins said quickly. "Afghanistan 2015. Rough time. He's still working through it." Daniel stopped mopping. He stared at the wet floor, seeing instead the face of a young soldier in the desert, dirt-streaking sweat eyes far older than his years. "Tell him to try the VA group," Daniel said at last. "Tuesday nights. Building C. Ask for Dr. Kelsey." Jenkins blinked. "You know them?" Daniel didn't answer. He dipped the mop again, but Jenkins nodded softer now. "Thanks, man. I'll tell him." He walked off, glancing back once, and when he did, he noticed Hale standing at the top of the stairwell, arms crossed, watching. Her eyes didn't leave Daniel until Jenkins disappeared upstairs. Later that evening, the building quieted, most desks empty, phones less demanding. The precinct sighed into night mode. Daniel was fixing a flickering bulb in the evidence room when Lauren walked in. She held a manila folder, face set in its usual lines of control, but her eyes carried something else, curiosity she hadn't managed to kill. "You were right." "Again," she said, placing the folder on the table. "Ridgewood. We found Vega's trail there. And more." Daniel stepped down from the ladder bulb, glowing steady now. "Glad it helped." She studied him a beat. "You knew before we did. About the address. About Dunn. About all of it. How—" He wiped dust from his hands. "People forget I'm there. They talk." Her jaw tightened. "That's not all. You see things. Things most trained officers miss." Daniel met her gaze. "Not my world anymore. Maybe it should be." Silence hung between them. She broke it first, softer. "For what it's worth." The captain asked how I found Ridgewood. I said it was confidential. Daniel tilted his head. "Why cover for me? Because if word gets out you're my source, you'll be targeted, and I don't think you'd let me protect you." He gave the smallest of nods. She was right. That night his apartment felt smaller than usual. He sat at the kitchen table, Lily's chessboard in front of him. He moved a knight forward, opening a line of attack, then moved it back. His mind wasn't on the game. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Cross." Detective Hale's voice clipped professional. "We found Vega at Ridgewood, just like you said, but it's bigger. Multiple shipments coming in tomorrow night. We're preparing a raid." He swallowed. "Glad to hear it." A pause. Longer this time. "The captain wants to know my source," she said. I told him it was confidential. Daniel leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Thank you." Her voice hardened. "Don't make me regret it, Cross." The line went dead. He sat in silence. The chessboard waited. Finally, he reached out, moved the knight forward again. He could feel it, the shift in his shoulders, the weight of anticipation, the tension before an operation. It had been years since he felt it, years since he allowed himself to. He had promised to stay invisible, to stay small. But the war he thought he'd buried was knocking again. And part of him, he didn't want to admit, was opening the door. On his phone, a text lit up the screen. "Daddy, look, my volcano works." A photo from Lily. A papier-mâché volcano painted bright red, erupting with baking soda foam. Her grin stretched ear to ear. Daniel stared at the photo until his throat tightened. This was why he stayed invisible. This was why he lived in the shadows, not for himself, for her. He typed back, "I'm so proud of you, Lily. Can't wait to see it in person." He put the phone down. And yet, He knew. Something had already shifted. Someone had seen him, and once seen, you could never go back to being invisible again. The precinct hummed with a nervous edge the next morning. Word of the Ridgewood raid had spread fast. Officers whispered in clumps near the coffee station, speaking low but glancing over their shoulders as if walls themselves might be listening. Vega wasn't just a drug dealer anymore. He was a symbol of something bigger, an operation with too many moving parts, too much precision for one man. And in the middle of that storm, Daniel Cross kept mopping. He worked the lobby floor with slow, steady strokes, each push of the mop echoing in rhythm with the chatter around him. To most, he was background again. Furniture, a shadow. But not to Detective Lauren Hale. From the upper railing, she watched him, eyes narrowing, mind whirring. By mid-afternoon, she intercepted him in the break room. Daniel was stacking fresh paper cups by the coffee pot when she stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. "You know this isn't over," she said. He didn't look at her. "Nothing ever is. Don't get clever with me, Cross." Her voice carried its usual iron, but there was something beneath it now, curiosity threaded with urgency. "You were right about the elevator, right about Ridgewood, and Dunn's calls." Daniel turned at that rag still in his hand. "You checked yes, and you were right again." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. His brother-in-law's arrest lined up perfectly with the leaks. Dunn's covering something. The captain doesn't see it yet, but I do. Daniel wiped his hands, then tossed the rag on the counter. "Then you know where to look." She studied him. "How do you keep seeing this?" He hesitated, his jaw clenched. He could feel the urge rising, the instinct to say nothing, to stay hidden. But her eyes pinned him in place. "Because I've lived it," he said finally. Her face softened just a fraction, enough to show she heard the weight behind the words. "And because people talk around the janitor," he added. "They forget I'm there." For a moment's silence. The hum of the vending machine filled it. Then she leaned forward. "If you hear anything else, you tell me." Directly. Daniel's lips pressed thin. "And if I don't?" "Then you'll regret it," she said, but her voice had lost some of its bite. Later that day, Daniel was in the evidence room shelves, stacked high with sealed bags and tagged boxes. The place smelled of dust and chain oil. He replaced a flickering bulb with steady hands. Behind him, the door creaked. Cross. It was Lauren. Again. She held her phone, scrolling quickly. Her brow was furrowed, mouth set tight. "Vega isn't acting alone," she said. The Ridgewood house had maps of Dixon Street. Shipments scheduled for tonight. Daniel's hand stilled on the ladder. "Tonight?" "Yes. Multiple trucks. We're planning a raid." He climbed down, dusting his hands. "Then you'll need every officer you've got." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "And maybe someone who isn't on the roster." He shook his head immediately. "No, I'm not part of your world. You keep saying that, because it's true." She stepped closer, searching his face. "But you don't believe it." He didn't answer. Instead, he gathered his tools, returning them to the cart. Lauren exhaled through her nose, frustrated but unwilling to push harder. "Just, if you hear anything, call me." That night, Daniel sat at his kitchen table, the chessboard, waiting in silence. Lily's side of the board had pieces scattered. Knights and bishops toppled mid-play. His side remained neat, untouched. He stared at it, unmoving. The war in his head wouldn't quiet. Should he let it go? Pretend Ridgewood and Dixon Street weren't his business? Or step and risk everything just to keep strangers safe? His phone buzzed. A message from Hale. "Tomorrow, 2300 hours. Warehouse 17, Dixon Street." He stared at it for a long time, the letters sharp as glass. He should delete it. Instead, he left it there, glowing on the table. The next morning, in the precinct lobby, Officer Jenkins caught up with him again. "Funny thing," Jenkins said, lowering his voice. "Detective Hale's been asking about you. Not official, just questions." Daniel kept mopping. "Not much to find." Jenkins smirked. "That's what she said. Classified records, redacted files. Not your average janitor's resume." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he kept silent. Jenkins shook his head, half amused. "You know, for a guy who mops floors, you've got half the precinct wondering who the hell you really are." He walked off, leaving Daniel standing in the middle of the lobby, mop in hand, heart pounding with an old, unwelcome rhythm. Later that afternoon, the detective bullpen filled with argument. Captain Briggs and Lauren stood before the whiteboard, warehouse diagrams spread across it. The warehouse has 3 access points, Lauren said. We can't leave any uncovered. We don't have the manpower, Briggs shot back. We focus on the main entrance. That's where the exchange will happen. And leave the back exposed, she snapped. They'll slip out the moment they sense something's wrong. Briggs slammed a marker on the table. We've got who we've got. Make it work. He stormed out. Lauren stayed glaring at the diagram, fists clenched. Daniel stood in the corner, emptying trash bins quietly. He glanced once at the board, then again. Finally, he spoke. Northeast corner's a blind alley. Poor visibility. Easy escape route. She turned. Excuse me. He walked closer, pointing with a gloved finger. And this loading dock here, it connects to the condemned building next door. They'll use it. Guaranteed. She stared at him. How do you know the building was condemned? He shrugged. Read local news. She watched as he picked up the marker and redrew the positions. With one adjustment, the coverage improved 2 exits secured with the same number of men. Slowly, she nodded. That could work. Her eyes lifted to his. You weren't just rangers, were you? Daniel capped the marker. Does it matter now? It might tonight. Their eyes held. Then he gathered the trash and left his footsteps steady, his heart anything but. For the first time in years, Daniel Cross felt the pull of the battlefield again. And this time he wasn't sure he could resist. The precinct turned into a machine. Gears meshed, lights burned, paper turned into plans. Detective Lauren Hale stood in front of a whiteboard that looked like a city map caught in a storm. Arrows, circles, red X's. Warehouse 17 at the center, a hard black rectangle on Dixon Street. She moved the marker like a surgeon, precise, economical, no wasted motion. Teams Alpha and Bravo main entrance, she said. Charlie covers the northeast alley. Delta floats rooftop and catwalk visibility. No heroics. Contain, don't chase. Captain Briggs grunted his approval, though the line of his mouth said he hated borrowing anyone's ideas. The new coverage, Daniel's coverage, closed 2 holes without adding a single officer. He could deny the source. He couldn't deny the math. Internal Affairs had a chair in the corner. Lieutenant Mora, jaw tight, eyes colder than the air conditioning. I want body cams rolling before you leave the lot, she said. Chain of custody intact. And if a civilian appears on any footage, this operation stops. Her gaze cut to Lauren. A message, not a question. Lauren didn't blink. We're not inviting civilians, she said evenly. We're running a warrant. The room felt the lie. Or maybe the possibility. Because the precinct had a rumor now, and rumors don't need invitations. In the armory, officers' cinched vests checked magazines, laced boots. Nylon hissed. Velcro ripped. The metallic chatter of bolts being racked cracked the space like ice. Daniel Cross stood in the doorway with a spray bottle and a rag, cleaning fingerprints from the glass, polishing a smudge no one else could see. He kept his eyes a little down, a little soft practice in not looking like he recognized every sound in here by feel. Jenkins fought a stubborn strap on his plate carrier. Why do these things always turn into knots when you need them not to? He muttered. Daniel stepped closer without asking. You threaded the shoulder through the inside loop, he said quietly. It'll pull crooked. Here. His fingers moved with gentle certainty, unbuckle pass-through reseat cinch. Now it'll ride even. You'll breathe better when you run. Jenkins tested it, exhaled in surprise. How'd you gravity, Daniel said. And a little experience. Jenkins looked at him, the way new soldiers look at old ones, with gratitude laced in guesses. You, ever do this part? Long time ago. Yeah, Jenkins said, a grin flashing as he grabbed his helmet. But the long time hasn't forgotten you. Daniel returned to the window. He wiped in slow circles until he could see himself, just a pale shape in the glass. A man-shaped smudge trying to be background. Across the room, Hale checked radios one by one, laying each on the table like chess pieces as she assigned call signs. When she looked up, she found Daniel's reflection before she found him. Her eyes flicked just once with something like thanks, something like warning. Not now, her look said. Stay on the other side of this line. He nodded. He didn't know if he was agreeing. By late afternoon, the war room hummed. Aerials printed, street grids taped to walls, a stack of sealed warrants like a quiet threat. Bill from security, a barrel-chested day guard who treated coffee like currency, poked his head in. Hale. Got forklift tracks on the north camera from last night. Big ones. Fresh. Lauren's head snapped. Forklift where? Between the container stacks. Bill pointed, tapping the monitor on his tablet. Grainy video. Tire arcs like fat parentheses. Also, a chalk mark on the concrete by the drainage grate. Hard to see unless you love this stuff. I love this stuff. Daniel loved this stuff too. But it wasn't his line to speak. He waited. Lauren didn't. Chalk is a rally mark, she said. Either staging or an escape queue. We reposition Delta to that grate. I want eyes down channel, not just across it. Captain Briggs frowned. We're thinning the catwalk. Not if we move the bucket truck here, she said, stabbing an X one block over. Higher angle. Better sweep. Same bodies, better sight lines. Briggs stared at the board. The solution offended him because it worked. Fine. Mora from the corner. And if the chalk mark was laid by one of yours, Lauren didn't look back. Then my camera will catch the hand that left it. The room went quiet. The plan changed shape. You could feel it lock. Daniel ducked out before his presence became a question again. The hallway was cooler, the air one notch easier. He pushed his cart toward the security office and found Bill leaning over a keyboard with the concentration of a bomb tech. Mind if I look? Daniel asked, voice low. Bill grinned without surprise. Always do, he said, tapping to rewind. I saved a clip for Hale, but to be honest, I like having someone in here who actually sees things. The screen replayed the north camera. Midnight. Forklift gliding like a shark between steel containers. A shadow paced the top stack's small shape handheld radio, glinting when it turned. Not a worker. A lookout. Freeze 2 seconds earlier, Daniel said. Bill tapped. The forklift's operator put a boot down to steady the turn. On the boot, duct tape around the laces. A cheap fix. Military guys tape when they need it quiet, he knew. Yard guys tie in a hurry. The tape told a story. Your operator's not a temp, Daniel murmured. He's trained. Maybe not military, but trained. He cuts his engine early, turns by momentum. Bill whistled. How'd you catch that? Didn't catch, Daniel said, remembered. Bill's smile faded with the word. He nodded like a man honoring something he'd just stepped on by accident. He slid a legal pad over. You draw it. I'll ping Hale. Daniel sketched fast container stacks, hidden exit, ribboned behind them, chalk mark near the great forklift approach arcs. He didn't realize his pen had tightened into a different grip the way he'd once drawn fire zones on sand. When he looked up, Bill wasn't looking at the paper. He was looking at Daniel's hands. You ever going to tell her? Bill asked softly. Who you were? No. That a rule? A boundary. Bill took the drawing, scanned it to Hale with a quick subject line. Delta reposition, C notes. Then he set the pad down and instead of the usual joke said, Be careful tonight. Daniel didn't answer. He didn't know which side of the sentence he lived on anymore. Sunset pulled a copper lid over the city. Daniel took his break on the back steps with a paper cup of cooling coffee. The precinct's brick wall warmed his shoulders, the kind of warmth you only notice when you've been cold a long time. Traffic growled beyond the fence. A gull cut the sky like a quick knife. He unfolded a napkin and drew Warehouse 17 from memory. Not the bird's eye lines, the human ones, where the shadow pooled at 2300 hours. The distance from the catwalk to the crate stack if a man had to jump. The sound a forklift makes when the driver feathered the throttle to talk on a radio without shaking his voice. He should throw the napkin away. He folded it and slid it into his pocket. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Kelly. Lily had macaroni and cheese with peas. Don't ask. She says your volcano advice worked. Daniel exhaled. The knot in his chest loosened by 1 finger width. He typed back, Thank you. I'll be late tonight. Keep the chain on. He stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then he locked the phone and watched the sky harden into night. Stay invisible, he told himself. Stay small. The wind said nothing. In records. Under light too white to be kind, Lauren pulled a file jacket with Daniel's name on it. The folder had more black bars than words. She didn't need the details. The shape was enough campaign ribbons units. She recognized commendations that don't show up unless someone in a very quiet room signs a very quiet line. Captain Briggs stepped in, hands on hips. "What are we doing, Hale? I've got IA breathing down my neck about a janitor who keeps knowing things. I've got a watch commander who thinks you're running an informant without paperwork. Tell me I don't need to shut this down." Lauren closed the file. "He's not an informant. He's a man with eyes. And a kid he's trying to raise without nightmares." Briggs huffed. "You going soft, I'm going strategic," she said, standing. "He won't be on my radio. He won't be on my roster. But if he happens to see something from a sidewalk, I'm not turning off my phone." Briggs stared. Something complicated crossed his face. "This is dumb. It's necessary. Or reckless. Reckless is going in blind because pride doesn't like help." They held each other's gaze until his blink gave her the point. He scratched his jaw and muttered, "Body cam's full roll. You bring me Vega. You bring me proof. And if that janitor of yours—" He stopped himself. "If Cross trips an alarm, Mossier will have my badge and yours." "Then he won't trip one," she said. He left without admitting she'd already decided. Lauren looked back at the file, at the name, at the redactions that felt less like secrets than scars. Her throat tightened in a way she never allowed in daylight. She slid the folder home and locked the cabinet. On her desk, Bill's scan of Daniel's sketch blinked in her inbox. She pulled it up. The lines were fast, sure accurate. She layered it over the map on the whiteboard and felt the plan click one more notch toward clean. She typed a message and then deleted it. Typed another and deleted that one too. Words that wanted to say thank you and don't. And if you're out there tonight, stay high, stay back, stay unseen. She settled for teams rolling 22:30. Do, not, engage. She didn't know why she sent it. She only knew the knot in her chest eased when she did. Daniel read the text in the dim locker room where no one ever looked at him long enough to wonder why he was there. The benches smelled of rubber and soap, and the tired iron of sweat ground into wood. It was the room where officers became versions of themselves that the world asked for. He sat with his hands braced on his knees, head bowed as if he were praying. He wasn't praying, he was negotiating. He pictured Lily's face when she laughed so hard she hiccuped. He pictured the chalk mark by the grate. He pictured Lauren Hale standing in a storm of bullets, not flinching, a woman who'd built a life inside armor and somehow still found room for mercy. He thought of the man he used to be, the one who counted souls as part of a job description, the one who learned to live with silence because the alternative was screaming. "Stay invisible," he whispered. "Stay small." His fingers curled. The clock on the wall ticked toward 2200. In the garage below, engines turned over. Radios tested. Doors slammed. The city's night shifted its weight to watch. Daniel stood. He opened his locker. Inside a spare set of coveralls, a pair of work gloves, a photo taped to the metal. Lily, with a paper crown off-center, grinning like the sun had chosen her. He touched the picture with 2 fingers. Not for luck, for permission. He closed the locker softly and walked toward the stairs. Not toward the armory, not toward the briefing room, not toward the safe choice either. He told himself he was only going to walk outside, to feel the air, to listen to sirens fade, to confirm purely as a citizen that the corner near Dixon Street had good streetlights and a rooftop that could see a chalk mark. He told himself many things. The truth was simpler, older, crueler. Some instincts aren't decisions, they're gravity. On Dixon Street, a forklift's slow engine coughed to life somewhere behind the containers. In the precinct lot, convoy lights snapped on one by one like a string of waking eyes. And Daniel Cross, who wanted more than anything to be a man, the world passed by, stepped into the night that would not pass him. He didn't run, he didn't hesitate, he just moved with the quiet inevitability of tide. Toward a warehouse. Toward a plan he hadn't made. Toward a choice he'd been making since the first time someone screamed help and the world answered too late. The warehouse district smelled of rust and rain-soaked asphalt. At night, Dixon Street was more shadow than city corridors of corrugated steel chain-link fences sagging with age puddles that reflected orange sodium lamps. Each echo of boots sounded like a secret trying to escape. At 2250, the police convoy crawled into position. Engines idled, low lights cut radios whispering. Black vans blended with the darkness, their doors opening to release teams in tactical gear. Helmets, rifles, Kevlar. The sound of Velcro and steel bolts racking carried across the damp air like a war drum. Daniel Cross stood far away, rooftop binoculars pressed to his eyes. He hadn't told anyone he was here. He had told himself he wouldn't come. But here he was, high above, hidden in shadow, overlooking Warehouse 17. From this vantage point, the plan looked solid. Too solid. He could see what the diagrams couldn't. The containers weren't stacked by chance. They formed choke points, narrow kill corridors. And in the northeast corner, exactly where he feared, two armed men loitered in the dark, unseen from the ground. Their rifles glinted faintly, barrels steady, eyes waiting. Daniel exhaled through his teeth. Hale's teams couldn't see them. Not yet. He pulled out his phone, thumb hesitating. He wasn't supposed to. He wasn't on comms. But his instincts roared louder than his promise to stay invisible. He dialed. Lauren Hale crouched by the lead van, radio clipped to her shoulder, voice crisp. Alpha in position. Bravo on standby. Delta. Her phone vibrated. She frowned, glancing at the screen. Daniel Cross. She pressed it to her ear, whispering sharply, "This is police business, Cross. You can't—" Northeast corner. His voice cut in low and urgent. Behind the containers. Two armed. And there's a secondary exit you can't see. They'll flank you. Her breath froze. How do you... Because it's what I would have planned. Silence. Then his voice again. You need someone watching your back. Lauren's jaw clenched. She wanted to yell to order him home, but the conviction in his tone, the certainty, left no room for denial. She whispered, "Stay put. Eyes only. Do not engage," and hung up before she could second guess. From his rooftop, Daniel watched her silhouette signal with hand chops. Teams shifted. One group peeled toward the northeast corner, quiet as shadows. Another repositioned to cover the hidden exit. The game board adjusted. For a moment, Daniel almost let himself believe it would be enough. Then the warehouse doors opened. It began with one sound, a forklift engine coughing, then another. Headlights blazed, cutting across the yard. Shadows stretched long. Crates shifted, revealing men with rifles pouring out like ants from a hill. Too many. Twice as many as intel suggested. The police perimeter tensed. Hale raised her fist signal to hold, but a guard dog barked sharp and sudden. A figure in a mask shouted. One trigger pulled, then another. The night exploded. Gunfire ricocheted. Officers dove for cover. Sparks sprayed from metal. The forklift screeched, ramming a barricade. Daniel's pulse locked into the rhythm of combat. He scanned movement mapping angles, tracking shooters like pieces on a board. One officer pinned behind a crate, two gunmen closing in. Another group trapped near the loading dock. And Hale. She was crouched behind a patrol car, cut off from her team. Muzzle flashes stitched closer and closer to her position. Her radio crackled uselessly, jammed by overlapping chatter. She was alone, and in 2 minutes, maybe less, she'd be gone. Daniel descended from the rooftop. Fast, controlled. He hit the ground running, moving through shadows. His eyes caught a glint, a pistol on the ground dropped by a fallen gunman. He scooped it up, checked the magazine. 4 rounds. Not much, but enough to make choices. He crept toward the trio, advancing on Hale. His body moved without thought. Close combat training drilled into marrow. The first man, he yanked him into the dark forearm, crushing his windpipe, dropping him silently. The second, Daniel swung low, striking the back of the knee, then elbowed his temple as he fell. The third turned, weapon raised. Daniel rolled concrete, scraping his shoulder. He came up firing. 2 shots. Precise. Clean. The man dropped. 3 down. He slid beside Hale, pressing against the patrol car. She whipped toward him, eyes blazing. "What the hell are you doing here?" He shoved the pistol magazine into place, gaze locked on the chaos. "Saving your operation." Her lips parted. Anger, shock, maybe relief tangled together. He nodded toward the warehouse office. "Your leak is inside." "Done. He's on his phone warning someone." "You can't," she started. "Check your tracker." She pulled her device, thumb flicking. The personnel map blinked. Dunn's signal wasn't at his assigned post. It was deep inside the office. Her stomach dropped. Damn it. Too exposed, Daniel warned. If you rush now, you won't make it. She met his eyes. She saw what he saw, the same grim math, the same calculation. I have to, she whispered, before evidence is gone. Daniel scanned the field. Gunmen shifting, police pinned, escape routes tightening. I'll create a diversion, he said. East side, 30 seconds. When you hear it, run. Don't stop. Before she could protest, he was gone. He darted through shadows, heartbeat steady, timing each step. He reached a stack of empty steel drums. He texted all units from a stolen phone converge east side. Suspect sighting. Then he shoved the drums. They crashed like thunder rolling, clattering, a cacophony that tore across the yard. Gunmen spun rifles, jerking toward the noise. Officers shifted, shouting, converging. Hale bolted. She sprinted across open ground, low and fast, weaving through fire. Bullets cracked around her, hot and sharp. She didn't stop. Daniel fired his last 2 rounds to cover her, then ducked as return fire chewed the crates above his head. He retreated into shadow heartbeat, hammering body alive with the old rhythm. Inside the office, Hale burst through the door. Officer Dunn froze mid-keystroke, files half deleted on the computer screen. His phone slipped from his sweaty hand. Drop it, she barked, weapon raised. His eyes darted, calculating. Then he reached. She didn't hesitate. One sharp command, one precise move. In seconds, Dunn was cuffed, the computer secured. Evidence glowed on the screen, messages, transaction logs, links to Vega's men. The betrayal was carved in digital stone. By midnight, the firefight ebbed. Dozens arrested. Crates seized. Vega himself gone, but his network fractured. 2 officers wounded, both stable. Outside, ambulances wailed. Police vehicles lined the street. Officers slumped against bumpers, exhausted but alive. Captain Briggs gathered the team in the command van. Exceptional work, he said gruffly. Adjustments mid-op saved lives. You kept it together under fire. He looked at Hale. Detective, you led well tonight. She shook her head. Not alone. Her eyes found Daniel standing at the edge of the lot, shadowed, ready to disappear. Mr. Cross, she said clearly, saved lives tonight, including mine. The room turned. Dozens of eyes on the janitor. Whispers rippled. The janitor? No. Not just. Who the hell is he? Captain Briggs' brows rose. Is that true? Daniel shrugged, his face unreadable. I was in the neighborhood, but the truth was already written in blood and smoke. The janitor wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. The precinct cafeteria buzzed the next morning, but not with the usual casual noise of coffee slurps and tired banter. It buzzed with whispers. Every officer in the building seemed to have a version of last night. He dropped 3 guys with a wrench. No, it was bare hands. Took them down like ghosts. Captain says he used to be some kind of ranger. Rangers try special ops. You don't move like that unless you've been deep. Daniel Cross walked through the room with his mop bucket. The chatter softened as he passed, then flared again in his wake. Eyes trailed him, heads turned. He kept his focus on the floor, rinsing the mop, pushing it in slow strokes. To them, he had become a rumor with a face. But to himself, he was just a man who had almost broken his promise to Lily. Stay small. Stay invisible. Detective Lauren Hale entered holding a folder. The room stilled when she crossed to Daniel. She didn't lower her voice. Captain wants a statement, she said. Daniel wrung the mop water dripping. I'm not on your roster. You are now, she countered. Internal Affairs is demanding an explanation. His jaw tightened. And what did you tell them, that you acted as a civilian defending officers under imminent threat? Any citizen has that right. He met her eyes. You're protecting me. Her expression softened just slightly. Or protecting my case. But the way she held his gaze steady, unflinching, told him it was more than that. By noon, he sat in Captain Briggs's office. The blinds were half-drawn, dust floating in tired light. On the desk sat a small box lid open, revealing a commendation medal. Not military, civilian. Still it gleamed with a quiet authority. Briggs cleared his throat. The department wants to recognize your assistance. Daniel shook his head. Not necessary. Briggs slid the box closer. Nevertheless. Daniel didn't touch it. Briggs leaned back, studying him. You've got a kid, don't you? Daniel's eyes flicked up sharply. Reynolds, your old captain mentioned it when we signed you on. Said you needed nights so you could be there for your girl in the mornings. Daniel's shoulders eased, but only slightly. Lily. Briggs nodded. Then consider this. We've got an opening. Security consultant. Flexible hours. Better pay than scrubbing floors. You'd still have mornings for her. Daniel's throat tightened. I'm comfortable where I am. Briggs smirked. Doesn't look comfortable to me. Daniel said nothing. His silence was armor. When he returned to the janitor's closet, something caught his eye. A child's drawing taped to the door. A stick figure, man in blue coveralls, stood beside a smaller figure with pigtails. Over them, shaky letters spelled, "My Dad." He froze. It was Lily's handwriting, but she hadn't been here. Not in months. Inside on the shelf sat a folded note. Emma left this at school. Thought you'd want it here instead of filed away. The signature? Hail. Daniel closed his eyes, his hand pressed against the drawing like a man anchoring himself in a storm. That evening, the lot outside the precinct was cool, the sky bruised with sunset. Daniel walked to his car keys jingling against his hip. Lauren Hale leaned against his sedan, arms folded, case files tucked under one elbow. You heading home, she asked, making dinner for Lily. She's back tonight. Her favorite always. She nodded, then straightened. About Briggs's offer. Security consultant. Did you think about it? Daniel leaned against the car beside her. News travels fast, I asked. He gave her a look. Why does it matter to you? She thought about it, then answered simply. Because talent shouldn't be wasted. Because second chances matter. And because I could use someone who sees what others miss. His lips twitched. Partners. Her eyes narrowed, but not unkindly. Colleagues. For a moment, neither spoke. The evening air stretched between them. Then she held out her hand. Not in gratitude, not in command, but in offering. Next time, she said softly, you don't need to fight alone. Daniel looked at her hand. His heart pounded with a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. After a pause, he took it. Firm, brief. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, trust, maybe even the fragile beginning of hope. That night, he drove home. In the passenger seat sat Lily's drawing edges curling slightly, colors bright as the flowers on his balcony. For 3 years he had lived invisible, safe in shadows, small. But now, someone had seen him. And once seen, he knew there was no going back. Steam curled from the pasta pot like tiny ghosts. Daniel drained the noodles, shook the colander, and listened to the sound, soft, steady, ordinary. The kind of sound you learn to love after a life full of explosions. Butter hissed in the pan. He tossed in chicken garlic, a handful of peas, because Lily would bargain and then eat them anyway. Dad, she called from the table, do stars ever get tired of shining? He smiled to himself. No, they don't get tired. People do. Stars just burn. Lily tilted her head, thinking. So, are you a person or a star? A very tired person, he said, plating her dinner. Eat. She did, swinging her feet under the chair, humming off-key. She told him about the volcano, the mess, the squeal from the classroom aide, when foam bubbled over the table. He listened like it was a mission brief. Nodded when she needed nods. Laughed where the laugh belonged. Refilled her water. Wiped a spot of sauce from her lip. When she finished, she pushed the plate back solemn. I made a new friend, she said. His name is Ken. He says his dad used to be in the army, too. Daniel's fork paused. What did you tell him, that my dad's a janitor? She grinned. But he's very brave. He wanted to say he wasn't. That brave was a word for people who didn't wake at 3 a.m. with their hearts sprinting. Instead, he brushed a crumb from her cheek and said, Thank you. They played 3 games of chess. Lily won 1 because he let her 1 because she earned it, and 1 because he was staring out the window thinking about a warehouse lit by muzzle flashes. Dad, Lily said softly, following his eyes, are you looking for stars? He blinked, something like that. He tucked her in with the soft quilt his mother had sewn before she left the world behind. Read 1 chapter from a book about a mouse detective. Switching voices for the mouse and the judge made Lily snort with laughter. She fell asleep with a hand on his sleeve as if anchoring him to shore. He waited, watched her breathe, listened to the strange, painful peace of a child's room nightlight glow. Distant traffic, the quiet that shouldn't feel like guilt. He slipped out, leaving the door cracked. On the balcony, the zinnias and marigolds breathed their small, stubborn color into the dark. Daniel watered them in silence. The city hummed. Somewhere a siren wailed and faded. A motorcycle growled and then became a rumor. He lifted his head and froze. An engine idled too long at the curb. Low. Expensive. Not a neighbor's sedan. He stepped back into shadow and peered through the slat. Black SUV, tinted windows, lights off. The street lamp didn't touch it as if the night bent around the shape. The driver's door never opened. He waited, counted. 30 seconds. 60. 90. The engine cut. The SUV rolled forward 1 car length. Stopped. A camera. No red glow. A man, no silhouette. But he knew the feeling, the way the air changes when someone is watching and cares very much about not being seen. He closed the balcony door softly, pulled the curtain and double-checked the chain on the front lock. He walked the apartment perimeter without turning on a light. Not paranoia. Practice. Stay small, he whispered. A reminder, a warning, a wish. He slept on the couch with his boots near his hand. Morning came pale and ordinary. Lily ate cereal, asked for braids, rejected braids, asked for a ponytail, accepted the ponytail, and then called it too tight. He redid it grinning because some negotiations you're happy to lose. At drop-off, she hugged him twice. Promise you'll be here when I get home. I promise, he said, meaning it with everything he had left. He watched until she disappeared into a sea of backpacks. Then he drove a different route back 3 turns, then 2, then a loop that made sense only to old instincts. No tail, no black SUV. The sky at last was simply sky. The precinct's morning smell coffee, burned slightly printer toner stale donuts met him at the door. Heads lifted. Nods came, then pretended they hadn't. He pushed his cart, looked down, moved like a river, finds the easy path. Jenkins intercepted him beside the bulletin board. Hey, about last night. I heard you. He stopped, smirked at himself. Never mind what I heard, just thanks. Daniel kept his answer simple. Everyone made it home. Not everyone, Jenkins said softly, but more than we might have. He shifted awkward, then blurted, You think I could, get that VA info again for my brother? He asked. Daniel repeated the details. Tell him to use my name. You got it, Jenkins said, relief shining. Thanks, Cross. Cross, he thought. Not janitor, not sir, just a last name used like a hand clasp. It landed warmer than he liked. Internal Affairs dug its hooks in after lunch. Lieutenant Mora sat across from him in a small interview room that wore neutrality like a bad suit. She pressed a recorder button with a manicured finger. Her eyes were cool water over ice. State your name for the record. Daniel Cross. Occupation Custodial Staff, 14th Precinct. Were you present at a police operation at Warehouse 17 on Dixon Street last night? He kept his voice level. I was in the area. Were you directed to the area by any officer of this department? No. Did you carry a weapon? Number beat. I picked one up from the ground when the firefight began. Did you discharge it? Yes. At whom? An armed assailant advancing on Detective Hale's position. Why were you near Detective Hale's position? Because she was about to die. Because a chalk mark told a story. Because my hands don't tremble until after. Because I am tired of funerals. Wrong place, right time, he said instead. Moore's lips thinned. Do you have law enforcement training? Mr. Cross silence. Captain Briggs leaned in the doorway. Arms crossed, a stoic boulder pretending to be furniture. He said nothing. The saying was all in his jaw. Detective Hale appeared beside him carrying a folder like a shield. Lieutenant, she said evenly, body cams show Mr. Cross acting as a civilian intervening to prevent imminent harm to officers and bystanders. The doctrine is clear. If you're looking for policy violations, look inward to the officer who leaked intel. Mora's gaze slid to Hale. I am. But I'm also looking at the widening definition of civilian under your command. Hale didn't blink. I don't command civilians. I respect them when they save my life. A brief, quiet battle occurred without words. Mora clicked the recorder off, then on again. Mr. Cross, did Detective Hale instruct you to attend the scene? No. Did she instruct you to engage Numa? Would you have engaged without her knowledge? He thought of the drums clattering, the text he'd pushed to move officers, the three men walking toward Hale with their rifles up. Yes, he said simply. Maura regarded him for a long, unreadable moment, then closed the file. We'll need a written statement. Of course, Hale said. He'll work with me on it. Maura's mouth quirked. I'm sure he will. She left with the cool efficiency of a blade sliding into a sheath. Briggs grunted. You're not making me popular, Cross. Daniel stood. Never been good at that. Briggs almost smiled. Consultant's desk is still warm. He left before his grin could be mistaken for approval. The precinct's noise felt different after that, less like judgment, more like weather. Daniel moved through it without getting wet. He fixed a copier jam in records that no one else could clear. He adjusted a motion sensor in interview 3 so it would stop calling night shift to deal with ghosts. He told Jenkins to stop wearing his vest under his jacket when he drove home. The seam line was a perfect handle for anyone leaning into the window. Small things, important things. Things his hands could do while his mind kept circling the black SUV shaped like a question. Near closing, Hale found him in the evidence room. No preamble, no ice. Just business, brisk and quiet. I need you to see something. He climbed down from the ladder. If it's another commendation, no thanks. Her mouth twitched. Worse. She set a manila envelope on the table, slid a laptop beside it, open to a paused frame. Grainy footage. Different angle than the precinct's cameras. The header read, Adjacent building, south roof cam. Private security system, she said. The owner's son is a fan of true crime. He puts cameras everywhere. She pressed play. A black SUV rolled into the alley 3 hours before the raid. Stopped. Waited. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Shoulders like stone. He moved with a stillness that meant more than quiet, it meant control. Head on a swivel without looking like it. The kind of scan Daniel felt in his bones. Hale watched Daniel instead of the screen. The man on the footage spoke to someone the camera didn't see, then turned his face just enough for a fragment of profile. Not clear. But on a good day, memory doesn't need clarity. It needs shape. Daniel's hand tightened around the screwdriver he hadn't realized he was still holding. Metal squealed. Mean anything to you? Hale asked, voice even almost gentle. He put the tool down. Carefully. Deliberately. Should it? He said. We ran him through facial. No match. His movement patterns matched specialized training. She held his gaze. Similar to yours. He looked at the frozen frame. Back at her. There are a lot of veterans, he said. Not many move like this, she answered. Not many make you grab a screwdriver hard enough to bend it. Silence filled the room like smoke. Hale slid the envelope closer. Before the raid, he stood here, watched the yard, marked something with chalk, and walked away. Our chalk. Daniel stared at the envelope and felt the past opening like a trapdoor. A desert. A convoy. A hand on his shoulder the night everything went wrong. A voice saying, we adapt or we die, brother. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them to find Hale exactly where he'd left her. Steady, relentless human. Who is he? Cross. He swallowed. The name burned like whiskey. He quit years ago. The room waited. My guess, she said softly when he didn't answer, is not a drug mule. His jaw worked once. Twice. He looked at the frozen man in the grain and saw a younger version laughing in a tent. Saw a shadow across the sun. Saw a bill he'd never paid. When he finally spoke, the words were low and careful, as if saying them wrong would summon something. I think he said you've found the kind of ghost that doesn't stay in a video. Her eyes didn't leave his. Name. He breathed in, out, felt the old ache near his spine pulse once like a distant drum. Marcus, he said, voice a rasp, then stopped as if the last name might break something that would never mend. Hale didn't push. Not yet. She nodded as if accepting the down payment. Then we'll need more than a warrant. He stared at the screen until the pixels blurred, and for the first time since the warehouse, he felt tired all the way through. I'll walk you out, he said. Not chivalry. Habit. They left the room together, not touching, not speaking, just moving down a hallway that suddenly felt narrower than it had in years. On the street outside, headlights slid across the precinct wall. A black SUV turned the corner and vanished before either of them could say a word. Hale looked at him. He looked at the corner. Neither pretended it was nothing. The night after the raid, Daniel Cross sat on his couch, the TV murmuring low, unwatched. On the coffee table lay Lily's drawings, her stick figure family, her volcano project, a half-colored rainbow. He sorted them like fragile evidence, careful not to crease the paper. His hands were steady, but his mind wasn't. The name haunted him. Marcus. It hadn't left his head since he said it out loud. Back in Kandahar, Marcus Shepard had been more than a soldier. He was a leader cut from iron, the kind of man other men followed without question. His presence steadied chaos. His instincts kept them alive more times than Daniel could count, until the night everything broke. The ambush, the red sandstorm, half the unit gone. Daniel remembered Marcus pulling him from the burning vehicle, shouting orders covering their retreat. And then like smoke, Marcus was gone. No body, no report, officially missing. Daniel had convinced himself Shepard was dead. Now seeing him step from that SUV alive, aligned with Vega's operation, it twisted something deep in his chest. Loyalty. Betrayal. Brotherhood. Ghosts don't come back to save you, they come back to finish what you left undone. He tried to sleep, but his body refused. Every creak in the building felt like a footstep. Every car passing outside made him tense. At 2 a.m. he gave up, walked to the balcony and watered the flowers. The zinnias stood stubborn against the dark. Across the street, a different car idled for 30 seconds, then drove off without headlights. The noose was tightening. The next morning, Daniel dropped Lily at school. She hugged him fiercely, whispering, "Don't be sad today, Dad." He kissed her hair. "I'll try." As he watched her run to join her friends, a thought burrowed in how much of her life could disappear if the wrong men pulled the wrong strings. At the precinct, Daniel kept to his cart. Mop. Bucket. Silent footsteps, but eyes followed him more openly now. Whispers had shifted from curiosity to respect tinged with unease. The janitor who fought like a soldier. The man who saved Hale. He didn't want their attention, but he had it. Detective Lauren Hale found him in the stairwell. She carried a thermos of coffee, dark circles under her eyes. "We need to talk," she said. He kept moving, pushing the cart. "About what Marcus Shepard?" His grip tightened on the handle. "You knew him," she pressed. "I served with him," Daniel admitted. "Then you know what he's capable of." Daniel stopped, turned. His voice was low-edged with something she hadn't heard before, fear. "He doesn't move product. He moves people, information, weapons. If he's with Vega, it's not drugs anymore. It's bigger." Her eyes searched his. "Why didn't you tell me before? Because I wasn't sure, and because some ghosts kill you for saying their names." For the first time, Hale's composure cracked. She looked shaken. Not by him, but by the size of what they were facing. "Then we don't have weeks," she murmured. "We don't even have days." Daniel nodded once. "No, you don't." Later in her office, Hale stared at the frozen frame of Marcus on her laptop. His face was half shadow, but his stance, his poise screamed training. She rubbed her temple exhaustion, threading her thoughts. Jenkins poked his head in. "Detective IA is asking about the warehouse files again. Want me to stall?" She waved him off. "I'll handle it." When he left, she whispered under her breath, "Handle it or bury it." She hated the silence that answered. By evening, Daniel was in the evidence room replacing a bulb. The light flickered, then glowed steady. He climbed down the ladder and found Hale waiting. She set a folder on the table. Inside were surveillance stills, grainy shots of Marcus with Vega's crew. A chalk mark, a hand signal. His boots taped for silence. She looked at Daniel. "You're not just in this cross. You're already a target. They know you saw them." He leaned against the ladder, eyes distant. "Then I'll stay invisible." "You can't," she said sharply. "Not anymore." Silence stretched. Finally, he asked, "What do you want from me?" Her answer was steady. The truth. Who Marcus Shepard really is, and why you look like you've seen a ghost. Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them, the weight in his gaze was undeniable. "Because he's not just an old soldier," he said. "He's the reason half my unit is dead." The words hung in the evidence room like smoke. He's the reason half my unit is dead. Detective Lauren Hale didn't move, didn't breathe. Her pen hovered above the stills of Marcus Shepard, frozen in grainy surveillance. Daniel Cross leaned against the steel shelving shadows cutting across his face. His voice was flat, but the tension in his jaw told her how much it cost to say it. "Start from the beginning," she said quietly. His eyes flicked to hers. A long pause. Then slowly he began. Kandahar, 2012. His voice carried her into it. A convoy of Humvees crawling through the desert sandstorms, smothering headlights, radios choked with static. Daniel remembered every detail, the smell of diesel, the grit in his teeth, the way the wind screamed like it hated them. He and Marcus had been point. Marcus gave the signals sharp and confident. Men followed without hesitation. Until they were in the kill zone, gunfire erupted from both ridges. RPGs slammed into the first and last vehicles. Fire turned night to hell. Daniel fought to drag men from twisted steel blood soaking the sand. Marcus barked orders, his voice cutting through chaos. They regrouped, fought through. Daniel had believed they'd make it, believed Marcus was leading them out. Until Marcus disappeared. The last Daniel saw of him was a silhouette slipping into smoke while half the unit bled out. And when the dust cleared, reports painted the story differently. Official language, tactical failure, enemy advantage, redacted lines where Marcus's name should have been. "Half my men died," Daniel said, voice hard, and Marcus walked away. Nobody saw him again. Not in the army, not in civilian life, not until last week. Hale stared at him. The file folder between them felt heavier now. "You think he sold you out?" she said. I don't think Daniel replied. "I know." Her brow furrowed. "But why? For money? For power?" Daniel shook his head. "For control." Marcus never cared about rank or medals. He cared about owning the board. He glanced at the surveillance photo again, Marcus standing like a king among pawns. "That's not a lieutenant in those pictures," Daniel muttered. "That's a man running an empire." Silence pressed against them. Finally, Hale said, "If you're right, Vega's just a face. The real threat is Shepard." Daniel's eyes hardened. "And if he knows I'm alive, I'm not just a witness. I'm leverage or unfinished business." Her hand tightened on the folder. "Then we move fast. Before IA ties my hands, before Shepard ties yours." Daniel gave a grim half-smile. "You don't know him. Moving fast won't matter. He's always 2 moves ahead." Hale leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time someone else got ahead of him." Their eyes locked. Not cop to janitor, not soldier to civilian, but 2 people who had seen too much bound by the ghost of a man who refused to stay dead. That night Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table, Lily's chessboard in front of him, pieces scattered mid-match. The night he'd moved forward and back too many times. He set it down, picked it up again. Across from him, Lily's empty chair weighted the small cushion indented by her weight the night before. He whispered to himself, "Shepard always plays the knight." Memory crashed over him the way Marcus used to toy with him during downtime in the desert, chess pieces in hand, explaining strategy with a smirk. Knights, Danny. They don't move straight. They don't move predictable. They jump. By the time you see them, they're behind you. Daniel slammed the knight back onto the board hard enough to rattle the pawns. The next day he was back at the precinct mop bucket, rattling head down. But invisibility had cracks now. Officers greeted him. Jenkins clapped him on the shoulder. Even Captain Briggs gave him a grunt that wasn't quite disapproval. And through it all, Hale's gaze followed him like a shadow. At noon she cornered him in the stairwell again. "IA is circling," she said. "They want to know why I haven't turned you in as an unauthorized participant. I can only hold them off so long." Daniel sighed. "Then let me disappear." Her jaw tightened. "You can't. Shepard's already seen you. If you vanish, he'll make sure you stay vanished." Her words hit harder than she meant them to. For a moment, Daniel thought of Lily's face, her crooked ponytail, her uneven letters on the drawing that said, "My dad." "No," he said finally. "I can't disappear, not until I know she's safe," Lily Hale murmured. The sound of his daughter's name in her mouth made him flinch. He turned away, gripping the rail until his knuckles whitened. "Shepard won't touch her." Hale's voice was steady low.
Then we make sure of it.
That night, Daniel walked Lily home from school. She chattered about her science fair, about Ken's joke that made the teacher laugh about how she wanted to paint the balcony flowers purple. He nodded, answered, smiled when she looked up. But his eyes kept scanning. Corners, windows, shadows. When they reached the apartment, he knelt and looked her in the eye. "Lily," he said, serious now, "if I'm ever late, really late, you go straight to Mrs. Kelly's. You don't wait. You don't answer the door for anyone but her. Understand?" She blinked, confused. "Why did I do something wrong?" He shook his head quickly. "No. You did everything right. Just promise me." Her lip wobbled. "I promise." He hugged her tight, pressing his face into her hair until his chest hurt, because deep down he knew the storm was already on its way. The note slid under Daniel's apartment door just after dawn. No knock, no footsteps. Just paper whispering across old wood, stopping against the toe of his boot as he crossed the room with Lily's lunchbox in hand. He stared at it for a breath. 2. Then he set the lunchbox on the table, locked the chain, and picked the note up between 2 fingers, as if it might stain. 3 words in blocky black ink, "Knight to E5. He didn't move for a long time. He just looked at the letters until they blurred. The memory arrived uninvited Marcus Shepard in a sand-walled tent grinning over a scuffed chessboard. Knight's Danny. They don't come straight. By the time you see them, they're behind you. Daniel folded the note once, twice again until it was heavy as a coin. He slipped it into his pocket and forced the world back into motion. He braided Lily's hair, tied her shoes, walked her to school with his eyes pinging off every alley, every parked car, every reflective window. He made her laugh at the corner by doing the voice of the mouse judge from last night's chapter. He hugged her too long. She didn't complain. At the gate, she turned, small hand lifted. "See you after, Dad." "Always," he said. He tried to believe it. Detective Lauren Hale was already at her desk when he reached the precinct. She looked like she'd slept in armor, and won. Coffee steamed beside her elbow. On the screen, the warehouse footage replayed in a stutter of pixel ghosts. Daniel stepped into her doorway and set the note down without preface. Her gaze flicked to the words. Back to him. "Shepard." "It's his voice," Daniel said. "On paper." "Knight to E5, she repeated softly, as if saying it might change its shape. "That a move you two used?" "He used it," Daniel said. "Every board. Every time he wanted me to know he'd seen further than I had." Her jaw worked once. A taunt. A message, he corrected. "He's on the move. He wants me to know he's already in position." She leaned back, the chair creaking. "We can put a patrol near your building. Not marked. Not obvious." "Do it," he said. "But don't park. Rotate. 20 minutes each. Shepard reads patterns." Her eyes warmed a fraction. "I hear you." He nodded once, then added, "If he's watching me, he's watching the precinct. Your routines, your coffee breaks, your tells." She almost smiled. "I don't have tells." "You touch your ring finger when you're thinking," he said. "You click your pen twice when you've made a decision you don't like but will execute anyway. You read names left to right on a board and faces right to left in a room. He'll see all of that." Her hand stilled on the desktop just off her ring finger. "So will you?" He didn't answer. Captain Briggs called them both into his office. Lieutenant Mora was already there, cool as a scalpel. The blinds cut the morning light into long stripes. The air smelled faintly of old coffee and older arguments. Briggs didn't sit. Vega lawyered up, done singing just enough to keep himself from drowning. Half-truths, quarter confessions. He says he's never heard of Marcus Shepard. Dunn wouldn't, Daniel said. He wasn't recruited. He was harvested. Small favors, bigger asks. He never saw the hand above the hand. Mora set a thin folder on the desk. "IA has 2 concerns," she said evenly. 1, your janitor is wandering into gunfights. 2, he's now a material witness whose history is a redaction field. His name is Daniel Cross. Hale said each word carefully, unheeded. Mora's gaze didn't move. "IA has an obligation to the department. We prefer our witnesses alive." Briggs rubbed his eyes. "Which is why we make this official. Consultant." He looked at Daniel. "It's not a trap. It's a shield." Badge isn't on your chest, but our body over yours. It gives me a reason to put muscle between you and the wrong car door. I didn't ask for a shield, Daniel said. You've got a daughter. Briggs said, simple as gravity. Ask for it anyway. Daniel looked at Hale. She didn't push. She just held his gaze like a hook anchoring a small, necessary boat. He exhaled. Temporary, Feinbriggs said. He slid a single-page agreement across the desk like a life raft. Sign it and I'll have 5 minutes of peace from IA. Mora's lips curved. Not quite a smile. 6 if we're generous. Daniel signed. The security office glowed with monitors. Bill had circled new anomalies in red chalk smears by a different drain forklift patterns that formed a shape you wouldn't notice unless you loved this stuff. Daniel loved this stuff. He leaned in. Box and rabbit, he said. Bill looked up. What shepherd's pattern? Daniel said. He pointed 2 forklifts, creating a box forcing pursuit down a narrow channel, while a runner the rabbit bolts through a clean lane that looks blocked from ground level. We lost a convoy once because the hills made the lane look filled when it wasn't. Hale's pen clicked. Twice. She caught herself, stilled it. So if he's laying the board, he's testing how we move. How you move. Daniel's hand brushed his pocket where the folded note sat like a hot coal. He's already moved. Then we move faster, she said. Don't chase a knight, he said. You cut the board in half and make him spend tempo. English cross. You anchor 1 point, he said, tapping the north camera feed. You make it the thing he can't have. Then you watch what he gives up trying to get it. Bait, she said. A choice he corrected. Bait's for amateurs. You give a man like Shepard 2 bad options and make him show you which kind of bad he prefers. Hale looked at Bill. Can you mask a camera offline without alerting a watcher who's scraping feeds? Bill grinned, already typing. I can make it sneeze. Make it sneeze at 1900 on the dot, she said. Just enough to look like an electrician's problem. And drop a fake manifest envelope near the grate. I want something he can't resist scanning. Daniel shook his head. He won't get his hands dirty. He'll send a kid with taped boots. Then the kid brings us to the night, Hale said. We follow the string. Moore's voice drifted from the doorway. While you 2 play chess, remember laws exist. Hale didn't turn. We remember. At noon, Daniel ducked into the VA. He shouldn't have. There were forms to process a badge, to print a protective detail to argue about. But the building's smell, coffee liniment, old leather chairs slowed the speed in his chest. Dr. Kelsey found him by the bulletin board. She didn't ask why he was there. She looked at his eyes and knew. You sleeping? She asked. When Lily reads to me, he said, nightmares. They learned my address, she nodded. You know the rules. When the pass knocks, you don't open the door when you're alone. I'm not, he said. Not anymore. Good, she said, and the word sounded like a blessing disguised as an order. Then keep not being alone. He left with her card warm in his pocket, as if paper could be a hand on a shoulder. The envelope waited on his windshield at dusk. No stamp, no address, just wait. He looked up and down the block porch lights, the distant bark of a dog, a bus wheezing to a stop at the corner. Normal sounds with abnormal edges. He slid into the driver's seat before opening it. Inside a chess knight, scuffed, familiar, and a burner phone screen, black, 1 contact preloaded. The contact name was not Subtle King. The phone vibrated in his palm. He answered and didn't say hello. Marcus Shepard's voice filled the car, smooth amused a river over stones. Danny. Daniel closed his eyes. The years collapsed to a dusty tent, the smell of gun oil and sweat. You left a mess, Marcus said lightly. Warehouse. Friends arrested. Money missing. Poor manners. Cleanup's kind of my thing now, Daniel said. A chuckle. Cute. How's the girl? Every muscle in Daniel's body turned to wire. Say her name and I end this call. I didn't, Marcus said, because I'm not the villain in your bedtime story. The ambush, Kandahar Daniel said, voice flat as concrete. Half my unit died. A pause. The sound of a man rearranging his mask. Half your unit died because command fed us bad intel and then left us dry. I adapted. So did you. Look, Danny, we're both alive because we learned to stop pretending the rules keep people safe. You walked Daniel said. I built, Marcus replied, no apology in it. You mop a precinct floor so a child can sleep. I respect that, but don't confuse my respect with mercy. What do you want? Stability. Marcus said, no more raids, no more cop games. You've signaled limits. I'm signaling mine. Stay out of my lanes and your life remains pleasantly domestic. My life is not a negotiation, Daniel said. It always was, Marcus said. Come on. You think your detective is clean? She's already traded something to shield you. IA is sharpening knives. I can dull them. I can also sharpen others. It depends whether you want to be a father next month. Daniel kept his voice steady by force. You threaten me again, and I will spend the last of what I am making sure you stop breathing. A long considering silence. Then almost gently, there he is. The captain under the janitor. I missed him. The line clicked. Dead. The phone wiped itself in his hand, screen pulsing, then black. Data gone. Daniel stared at his own reflection in the windshield. He didn't recognize the man looking back, too calm, too still, the quiet before a storm you already know the shape of. His other phone buzzed. A text from Hale. I'm outside. Don't turn on your lights. He stepped out. She was across the street leaning against an unmarked sedan. On instinct, he pocketed the chess piece. Was that him, she asked? Yes. Trace. He burned it. What did he want? Me small. You quiet. She watched his face while he said it. Not our language. No. Her eyes shifted to his building. We're moving Lily and your neighbor tonight. Short-term safe house. No debate. He started to object. She cut him off. I'm not asking. You can hate me later. For now, we pack a bag. He exhaled. She'll be scared. Then we make it a game, Hale said. A sleepover with extra marshmallows. He almost said no. The word rose to his lips, wearing pride like armor. Then he pictured the SUV idling. The note. The night. The voice that had once pulled him out of fire and now threatened to burn down his life. Okay, he said. They moved like a practice team, Daniel collecting Lily's favorite hoodie, the mouse detective book, the purple hairbrush. Hale texting a patrol to circle twice, then park 3 blocks down and walk in the back. Mrs. Kelly took the news with the fierce calm of a woman who'd raised 3 sons into firefighters. Lily frowned at the sudden adventure. But it's Tuesday. We read chapter 6 on Tuesdays. We'll read it there, Daniel promised. Twice. Her eyes brightened. Even the judge voice. Especially the judge voice. He carried her down the stairs, every step measured, and handed her into the unmarked car like she was made of glass and light. Hale buckled her in with a tenderness Daniel pretended not to see. Back in an hour, Hale said. You pack for yourself. 2 days. Essentials only. Copy, he said, and the old word startled both of them with how easy it came. When he returned upstairs, his door was ajar. He froze. Then slid the chain free and eased it open the rest of the way. Shoulders angled, breath held. No one inside. Nothing taken. Nothing moved. Except for one thing. On the chessboard, the knight had been placed in the center. E5. Daniel stood in the doorway, the hall light casting his shadow across the floor, and felt something cut away inside him, the last thread of believing this could be solved with caution alone. He walked in, closed the door, and set the burner on the table like a souvenir from a war museum he never wanted to visit. His phone buzzed again. Hale. Camera sneeze at 1900. Manifest planted. He texted back. He's been here. 3 dots. Then we stopped letting him write the rules. Daniel looked at the knight on the board and for the first time since the ambush all those years ago moved a piece without permission. He slid his king 1 square. Not grand, not dramatic. Just a small stubborn claim. Your move. Outside somewhere not far enough away, a black SUV idled, then rolled slowly past the block. And in the precinct on a monitor that flickered like a tired eye, a camera coughed once exactly at 1900 before returning to normal. On the grate by the chalk smear, an envelope breathed in the night wind. A boy with taped boots stepped out of shadow. The board had pieces, the pieces had names, and the knight wasn't the only one who knew how to jump. The boy bent low at the great taped boots, whispering against concrete. He thought he was invisible. He wasn't. From a rooftop 2 blocks away, Daniel Cross lay prone, binoculars steady, breath slow. The boy's shoulders slouched under a jacket too big, his steps cautious but clumsy. Not Shepard, not Vega, just a runner cheap muscle given a task beyond his pay. The envelope fluttered in the night breeze. The boy's hand reached. Click. Cameras turned back on right on schedule. Hale's team moved like clock hands shifting into shadowed arcs. Daniel whispered to himself, "He's watching you, kid." Across the street, Hale sat in an unmarked sedan with Bill monitoring the feeds. Her headset crackled. "Target at the grate. Picking up the package. Hold," she ordered. Her eyes never left the screen. The boy lifted the envelope, glanced once over his shoulder, then tucked it into his jacket and turned. Lauren's jaw tightened. "We tail. Do not engage. I want the string, not the knot." Her eyes slid to Daniel's rooftop across the way. She couldn't see him, but she felt him. The boy weaved through the warehouse yard, past rusted fences and forgotten forklifts. Every 20 feet he checked over his shoulder, training drilled into him. Someone had taught him paranoia early, but not early enough. 2 figures in plain clothes peeled from the sidewalk, blending into his path, trailing 3 paces back. Bill's voice came through the comm's Bravo shadow on him. North Alley. Closing. Daniel moved parallel 1 block over tracking from height. He saw the rhythm of the boy's walk, the nerves in his pace. He saw the way he cut left, too suddenly doubling back. Shepard Daniel muttered, "You trained him in misdirection." The boy stopped at a graffiti-tagged wall, slipped inside a side door like a coin through a slot. Lost visual. Bravo whispered. Hold Hale snapped. "Don't spook him." Inside, the boy hustled down a stairwell envelope pressed to his chest. At the landing, a man waited. Marcus Shepard, tall, shoulders squared, dressed like a ghost in civilian clothes that looked too neat for the hour. He didn't take the envelope immediately. He studied the boy, head tilted, eyes sharp. "Anyone see you?" "No," the boy stammered. "No, sir." Shepard smiled wolfish without warmth. "They always see. The question is whether you notice them seeing." He plucked the envelope from the boy's jacket, slid it open, scanned the pages. Manifests, schedules, staged but polished. He chuckled. "Clever." The boy shifted nervously. "Should I burn it?" Shepard tucked the papers back, his eyes narrowing as if he could see the fingerprints of whoever baited him. "No," he murmured. "Let's see where this thread leads." On the rooftop, Daniel caught his breath when Shepard stepped into frame of a distant camera. Even grainy, he recognized him. The way he scanned without turning his head. The way his shoulders carried command. Bill cursed in Hale's ear. "That's him." Lauren's pulse jumped. "We don't move. We track." But Daniel whispered, voice raw, "Hello, brother." Minutes stretched. Shepard and the boy exited on a different side of the building, slipping into a black SUV that rolled slow, no headlights. Bravo called in. "Tail engaged." Half a block distance. "Careful," Hale warned. "He'll smell you before he sees you." Daniel folded his binoculars, slid into the stairwell, moving down fast. His instincts screamed. This wasn't just reconnaissance, it was Shepard letting himself be seen. The night had moved, and it wasn't to escape, it was to provoke. The SUV crawled through back streets, Bravo trailing. Every turn felt intentional. Stop signs held too long. One-way detours that offered no cover. Shepard's baiting Daniel muttered into his phone even though he wasn't on the radio. He called Hale directly. She answered low. "We see it. Pull them off. We lose the string if we do. You'll lose more than that if he decides to cut it." A beat of silence. Then her voice tight. "Bravo, disengage. Fall back 2 blocks." The relief in their reply carried weight, but the SUV slowed as if Shepard already knew. And then it vanished. Not a turn, not a break. Just gone between 1 block and the next. Bill swore, slamming the desk. "How the hell switch feeds?" Hale barked. Screens flicked. Static, black. Then one camera caught the SUV 3 blocks over, idling at a corner store like it had been there all night. Shepard stepped out alone. Bought a pack of gum, a bottle of water, looked directly at the nearest camera and smiled, then got back in and drove away. Daniel whispered from the rooftop, message received. 2 hours later, the precinct debrief felt hollow. Briggs paced. We can't keep bleeding resources on cat and mouse. Vega's operation is fractured, but Shepard... He's turning this into a war game. And I don't have the budget for a war game. Hale's jaw tightened. If we don't stop him, this city pays the budget. Moore's voice was ice. Or maybe we accept the limits. We break Vega's pipeline call that a win and stay out of Shepard's orbit. Daniel spoke for the first time. That's not how he works. If you leave the board, he doesn't. All eyes turned to him. He'll come for you, Daniel said flatly. For Hale. For me. For anyone who touched his peace. He doesn't leave witnesses. He doesn't leave rivals. He finishes games. The silence after that was a verdict no one wanted to read aloud. That night, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, Lily's chessboard before him. The knight still on e5. He moved a pawn. Just one. Because pawns weren't nothing. They were the beginning. And sometimes they became more than anyone expected. At midnight, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. But he did. Shepard's voice smooth, amused. Still awake, Danny? Good. Tomorrow let's meet. Old friends shouldn't hide forever. Daniel closed his eyes, exhaling slow. Where you'll know when you see the night, Shepard said. The line clicked dead. Daniel sat in the dark, alone. Except for the night on the board watching him. The morning came gray and thin, as if the sun itself had doubts. Daniel Cross poured coffee into a chipped mug, stared at it steaming, then left it untouched. His mind wasn't in the kitchen. It was in Kandahar, in smoke, in fire, in Marcus Shepard's voice still echoing down a line that had gone dead. Tomorrow, let's meet. And today was tomorrow. At breakfast, Lily sat cross-legged on her chair, spreading jam too thick on toast. Dad, she said through a mouthful, our science fair's Friday. You'll come right, Daniel forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it, promise. The word twisted like barbed wire. He reached across, touched her hand. Promise. She grinned, satisfied, and hummed as she poured orange juice. She didn't see how his hand trembled when he pulled away. By 9, he was at the precinct cart, rolling, mop squeaking, but his focus was elsewhere. He was waiting for the night. Lauren Hale intercepted him outside records. She carried 2 coffees, pushed one into his hand without asking. You didn't sleep, she said. Neither did you, he replied. They stood there, the hallway busy around them, neither drinking their coffee. Finally, she said, You're expecting him. Daniel nodded once. What's the play, she asked. Watch for the night. Her eyes narrowed. Cross. He wants me to see it. He wants me to come. If I don't, he'll come here, to me, to Lily. Her jaw clenched at the name. She lowered her voice. Then we don't let you walk in alone. You think you can outmaneuver him? Maybe not, but I can stand next to you while you do. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, gratitude, fear, all tangled. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. At 10:47, Bill called from security. Detective, you're going to want to see this. Lauren dragged Daniel with her. On the north camera feed, the image flickered, then steadied. Spray painted on the wall opposite the precinct garage, a single white knight, chess piece silhouette, bold, clean, fresh. Bill whistled low. Guy's got style, I'll give him that. Daniel's jaw tightened. He's calling me out. Broad daylight. Hale leaned closer to the screen. Or he's daring you to move without cover. Daniel turned. He knows we're watching. He knows you'll send a team. He wants me to come anyway. So don't? Hale snapped. Make him wait. Daniel shook his head slowly. That's not how he plays. By noon, the precinct buzzed with it. The night graffiti spread through whispers faster than coffee orders. The janitor's got his own stalker. Not stalker. Ghost. IA's gonna bury Hale if this blows. Daniel ignored it all. He loaded his cart gloves tucked in his back pocket. Lauren followed him to the stairwell. Talk to me. He leaned on the rail. Marcus Shepard doesn't make idle moves. That marks the opening bell. If I don't answer, he escalates. She folded her arms. Then we escalate first. You don't get it, Daniel said, voice low. He knows your playbook. He trained men who trained men who trained you. He doesn't see cops. He sees pieces. Predictable pieces. Her voice sharpened. And what are you? He looked at her eyes bleak. The unfinished game. At 1:15, the black SUV appeared. Same model, same tinted windows. It rolled slow down the block past the night graffiti, then stopped at the corner. A door opened. Marcus Shepard stepped out. Even in civilian clothes, pressed jacket, dark jeans, he carried himself like a man who owned gravity. His head scanned without turning. He smiled faint, like he knew every camera in the district had caught him. Then he leaned casually against the SUV and lit a cigarette. Waiting, Bill muttered over the feed. He's daring you. Lauren swore under her breath, then turned to Daniel. Don't, not without backup. Daniel's heart pounded steady, slow. Not fear, readiness. He's here for me, he said. If I don't go, he'll take the next move. You'll walk into a trap. Daniel's lips twitched, almost a smile, but bitter. Maybe. Or maybe I'll finally know which game he's playing. 5 minutes later, Daniel stepped out of the precinct. The air tasted of exhaust and smoke. The night on the wall gleamed white against brick. The SUV idled a predator's purr. And Marcus Shepard straightened, flicked his cigarette away, and smiled when he saw him. 2 soldiers, 2 ghosts, on a city street broad enough for the whole world to watch. Daniel walked forward. Danny, Marcus called, voice smooth, amused, as if they were meeting at a bar instead of in the middle of a chessboard painted in blood. Daniel stopped 10 feet away, his hands loose at his sides. His eyes never left Marcus. You're alive, Marcus said lightly. Part of me wondered if you died invisible. But here you are, mopping precinct floors, raising a daughter. Cute. Stay away from her, Daniel said, voice flat as stone. Marcus chuckled. Ah, there's the fire. You never did learn how to separate the war from the home, did you? Always bleeding one into the other. You bled men out in Kandahar, Daniel snapped. Half my unit. Marcus tilted his head. Correction. Command bled them. I adapted. Survival isn't betrayal, Danny. It's evolution. Evolution into what Marcus's smile widened, into someone who decides the board instead of just playing on it. He stepped closer. Daniel didn't flinch. You're wasted here, Marcus said softly. Invisible. Forgotten. You could be more. With me. Like old times, only this time no one dies for someone else's orders. We write them ourselves. Daniel's jaw clenched. And when we're done writing, how many more kids grow up without fathers? Marcus shrugged as if the question bored him. Collateral. But yours doesn't have to. The words slid between them like a blade. Daniel's fists curled. Marcus smiled wider. Ah, still predictable. From the sedan across the street, Hale's hand hovered near her radio. Her eyes burned through the windshield. She whispered, "Don't take the bait, Cross." But on the sidewalk, the board was already in motion. The sidewalk seemed too narrow for the weight of what stood upon it. Daniel Cross, broad-shouldered in a plain work jacket. Marcus Shepard, relaxed, coiled, smiling like a man who knew which page of the script they were on. 10 feet apart. Between them, nothing but air and the ghost of Kandahar burning. You never did answer me, Marcus said, voice smooth as a knife sliding back into its sheath. Why clean floors when you could own the room? Why mop after men who couldn't lace your boots? Daniel's eyes didn't blink. Because one room is enough. Because one child is enough. Marcus laughed low, amused. There it is, the small life, the myth of safety. You really think you can protect her with soap and anonymity? Daniel's hand twitched at his side. Say her name, I didn't. Marcus cut in calm. Because I'm not cruel without reason, but I need you to understand. You can't keep the board out of her life, Danny, not when you've already stepped back onto it. Across the street, Lauren Hale gripped the steering wheel so hard, her knuckles bleached white. Her earpiece crackled Bill, whispering updates from the feeds Jenkins ready with a unit 2 blocks away. Call it, Jenkins said. We can move in 30 seconds. Negative, Hale hissed. Not until I see Shepard make his play. Cross can handle 30 seconds. But her pulse was hammering like gunfire. Daniel spoke first. What do you want, Marcus Balance? Marcus said simply, the city's a mess. Vega was sloppy. Men like him flood neighborhoods with chaos. Me, I bring order. Systems, predictable flows. Everyone gets paid. Everyone knows their lane. No stray bullets, no surprises, just commerce. That's not order, Daniel said. That's control. Semantics. Marcus's smile hardened. And you're useful to me. You see angles most men miss. You proved that at the warehouse. You can keep your mop if you want, but I know you, Danny. You get itchy when the guns start singing. You miss the game. Daniel's voice cut flat. I miss my daughter when she's in the next room. That's my game now. Marcus's expression cooled. So you choose small. You choose invisible. I choose her. Silence pulsed. Then Marcus leaned forward just slightly, voice lowering into a razor. Then you've already lost. A black sedan pulled around the corner, windows tinted. It slowed as it neared, rolled down the lane like it belonged to no one and everyone. Lauren tensed. Bill's voice spiked in her ear. Unknown vehicle. Not ours. Hold, she whispered. Marcus flicked his cigarette into the gutter, eyes never leaving Daniel's. You'll see me again, he said. And when you do, it won't be like this. You'll have to choose. Me or the crossfire. He stepped backward toward the SUV. The sedan behind him idled, then pulled to the curb. Marcus opened the door, paused, looked back one last time. Tell the detective I said hello, he murmured. And he was gone. The SUV rolled off, swallowed by traffic, the sedan sliding behind it like a shadow. Lauren burst from her car, sprinting across the street. Cross Daniel hadn't moved. He stood there staring at the space Marcus had left, jaw tight, shoulders squared like he was holding up the building behind him. She grabbed his arm. You okay? His voice was iron. No. He knows Lily. Her heart dropped. How do you know? Because he wanted me to. Daniel's eyes finally met hers. He's already inside my walls. Back in the precinct, the debrief was a storm. Briggs slammed his fist on the table. You let him walk? He wasn't walking. Lauren shot back. He was staging. Every step was theater. He wanted Cross to see him, and he wanted us to move early. If we had, we'd have walked into a box we didn't see. Moore's voice was flat. And now we've confirmed that one of your janitors is holding street meetings with a ghost who runs an empire. Do you know how this looks on my desk? Daniel sat silent in the corner, hands folded, eyes distant. He wasn't listening to the politics. He was replaying Marcus's voice. You'll have to choose me or the crossfire. That night, Lily slept at the safe house, curled under a borrowed quilt, clutching her mouse detective book. Hale sat in the living room chair, eyes scanning the windows, gun at her hip. Daniel stood by the door, staring out at the street. He spoke without turning. He's not bluffing. Hale's voice was quiet. I know. I can't keep her safe if I stay here. You can't keep her safe if you run either, Hale countered. Shepard will follow. He'll always follow. Daniel finally looked at her. Then we end it. Her eyes met his steady. Together. In the distance, across the city, Marcus Shepard poured himself a drink in a suite too clean to belong to criminals. He set a white knight on the glass table before him, turned it once in his fingers, and smiled. The game was no longer opening. It was middle play, and every piece was in motion. The safe house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rattle of pipes in the walls. Daniel Cross sat on the edge of a chair, boots planted, hands clasped. His eyes weren't on the room, bare furniture, pale curtains, sterile comfort. His eyes were on Lily's sleeping form down the hallway. She breathed evenly, curled around her mouse detective book hair, spilling over the pillow like a golden shield. Detective Lauren Hale sat across from him, coffee cooling in her hands, eyes scanning the window. She'd positioned her chair to face both the door and the street. It was instinct, not choice. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. His voice was low, heavy. He'll come again. Hale didn't argue. Then we make sure we're ready. Daniel's gaze drifted. He wants me to choose. Him or the crossfire? Her jaw tightened. You won't. You'll choose Lily. Every time. He looked at her, then something raw in his eyes. That's what scares me. He knows it too. The weight of it filled the room. At dawn, the city stretched awake. A patrol car idled 2 blocks away, its officers pretending to drink coffee, eyes sharp. Bill monitored feeds back at the precinct. Briggs argued with Mora over paperwork thick enough to choke a desk. But here the air stayed taut. Daniel checked Lily's backpack twice, packed her favorite hoodie, tucked the night chess piece into his pocket without realizing it. Hale watched him. You're planning something. He didn't deny it. I can't wait for him to choose the battlefield. Cross. No. Daniel cut in voice steady. He's already inside my life, yeah. If I keep playing defense, Lily pays the price. I won't let that happen. Hale set her cup down, leaned forward. Then we do it together. Daniel's lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile. You'd walk into Shepard's game with me, I already did, she said simply. The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. That night the trap was set. Bill's sneeze trick masked 2 cameras near the old rail yard. Jenkins staged a van half a block out. Hale and her team lined the shadows, spread thin but precise. Daniel moved alone into the open. The night graffiti was fresh on a steel container painted hours earlier, gleaming under the moonlight. And Marcus Shepard was waiting. Leaning against a black SUV jacket, crisp smile sharp. You came, Marcus said. Daniel's footsteps were steady. You knew I would because you can't help yourself. You were never meant to be invisible, Danny. You burn too bright. Not for you, Daniel said coldly. Not anymore. From her vantage, Hale whispered into her radio. Hold. Wait for my signal. Her pulse thundered. She knew this was more than a meeting. It was a reckoning. Marcus stepped closer, eyes glinting. You've got 2 choices. Step aside. Let me build order out of chaos or keep fighting me until Lily becomes a headline you can't scrub clean. Daniel's fists curled. His voice was iron. You don't touch her. Marcus tilted his head. Still predictable. Then he snapped his fingers. From the shadows, men appeared. 5, 6. Guns low but ready. The SUV door opened, another stepping out. The board was full. Lauren's voice cut through the comms. Move. Officers emerged from the dark Bravo and Delta, converging weapons, drawn voices, shouting commands. Lights flared. Shouts cracked the night. Shepard's smile didn't fade. He raised his hands almost lazily, like he'd expected this too. You brought friends, he said. So did I, Daniel answered. For a heartbeat, the standoff balanced on a knife edge. Then Shepard laughed low and smooth. Middle game, Danny. Not the end. Before anyone could move, flashbangs erupted behind his men, bright light, deafening sound. When the smoke cleared, the SUV was gone. The men scattered, vanishing into alleys with drilled precision. Marcus Shepard was nowhere. Silence crashed down. Officers shouted, regrouped. Hale's voice cut sharp, issuing orders. Daniel stood in the chaos, chest heaving, his hands still clenched around the knight in his pocket. He knew. This wasn't victory, it was survival. One more move on a board that stretched further than the city itself. Later in the safe house, Lily stirred in her sleep, mumbling about science projects and purple flowers. Daniel sat beside her, hand on the quilt, watching her breathe. Hale leaned in the doorway, her face unreadable. He got away, she said quietly. He wanted to, Daniel answered. Then what was tonight? Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Hale. His voice was low, certain. His reminder that the game isn't over. Outside, somewhere across the city, Marcus Shepard poured another drink. He set the night piece on the table beside him and smiled. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.